Hereby call to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, August 25th, 2025. Mr. City Manager, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Shorter.
Here.
Councilmember Groff.
Here.
Councilmember Bauer.
Here.
Councilmember Strawn.
Here.
Mayor Rowe.
Here. And with us at the dais, we have, by way of introduction, our City Attorney, Rachel Tierney, who's on my right at the end of the dais. City Manager Pat Trudgeon is on my left at the other end of the dais. We will make introductions as various agenda items come up as to who's presenting those and participating as a staff member. I would remind folks, if you have a cell phone, to silence it or otherwise assure that it doesn't disrupt the meeting this evening. We do have a copy of the meeting materials, excuse me, for the public on the back table underneath the big clock by the door. That is available for the public to use. It's got all the materials that are under consideration by the council this evening. It is one copy, so you'll have to share. We do have extra copies of the agenda on that table also, and those you can keep for your own use. And with that, we'll ask folks to stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next on our agenda is approval of tonight's agenda, and as always, I'll begin by checking with staff to see if there are any changes that need to be made. Mr. Trudgeon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we do have one removal. That is item 7H was consider an abatement for 2407 Dale Street. Staff went out today and the violation has been corrected, and so we can take that off the agenda for any official consideration.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. I'll check with council members. Are there any changes council members would like to make to tonight's agenda or items that council members would like to remove from the consent agenda for separate consideration this evening? Does not appear to be the case. We'll do a check with members of the public as well in regards to our consent agenda. That starts at the bottom of page 1 and continues on to page 2 of the agenda. There's a number of items there that we'll be taking up at the end of the meeting. They're usually rather administrative and hopefully non-controversial, but we do all of them as a single motion. And as I said, we do it at the end of the meeting. If anyone is here this evening to speak about or ask a question on one of the items in the consent agenda, this would be a chance to let us know, and we'll move that item earlier in the meeting so that you can make your comments or ask your questions on that item and still be here and get home at a reasonable hour. Is there anyone here for an item in section 10 of our agenda, the consent agenda, items A through G? All right, it does not appear to be the case. With that being said, then we have our agenda this evening as proposed with the exception of item 7H, which has been removed and is no longer needed to be considered. Is there a motion to approve that agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Strawn. Discussion on that motion?
No.
Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have our agenda for this evening. Next on the agenda is our first opportunity in our meetings for public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on items that are not on this evening's agenda, but are either related to city business or are of interest to people in the community. Is there anyone here to speak this evening not on an agenda item? Yes, all right. So what we'll do is if you want to come up and have a seat at the table, we'll just quickly go through the process and procedures for public comment and rules of the road. It's pretty simple.
Distribute
Just
these?
give them to Mr. Trudgeon here.
They're very rudimentary, but the measurements are almost right on.
All right. And so the rules of the road for public comment is to have a seat at the microphone and let us know at the start of your comments what your name is and either your street or your address, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
My name is David Winter.
Wait till I'm finished with the instructions first. There's a few more to follow. Sorry about that.
Okay.
There is a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which I try to enforce gently but also generously. And then also direct comments or questions to the council. If there's something that we need to respond to as the city and we're not able to deal with it this evening, which is usually the case, the council would direct staff to provide a follow-up or answer any questions. With that, please start with your comments.
My name is David Winter. I live at 2060 Lindy Avenue in between Skillman and Eldridge. And in that 1x6 block area, There's 2 parking rides for the fair. Lindy Avenue only has 6 addresses on it, and there's no parking at all on Carl Place. It's a dead end. Now you do the measurements. My truck is 6 feet wide, and from the curb with the mirrors it takes up 8 feet. That leaves 22 feet for a 40-foot long fire truck to make a 90-degree turn. It can't be done. There can't be any parking on either side of the street on Lindy Avenue during the fair. And again, I'm not the first person here from Lindy or Carl Place. This has been going on for a number of years now. On Monday, I called everyone on the staff. No one returned a call except for Mr. Groff, who knows the neighborhood and said he'd try to help me out. I don't know how many times residents from that area have to come back before you guys. Drive by there. You'll see it. Ask your phone. A 40-foot long vehicle cannot make a 90-degree turn in 22 feet. So there's like 10, 11 addresses on Carl Place. You can't park there already, but on one side of Lindy you still can. You got to eliminate that 8 feet during the fair. That neighborhood is so saturated because of the 2 park and ride situations, you can't get to Lexington Park for scheduled events, and you can't get to Mayflower Park because the cars are parked all along Fernwood. The only other way to get into Lindy is through Burke, and that takes a 90-degree turn to get there as well. I got to tell you guys, the people in my neighborhood think this is ridiculous. I called Public Works, and I believe Mr. Groff did too. The Public Works guy wouldn't come out and look. He called the city police chief, and they sent a cop car out. And we see the police car coming down the road, and everybody in the neighborhood knows what it's about because it's the same thing every year. I wish you guys would address this. Drive by there on your way home. I mean, is there any parking in front of you guys' house for the fair?
Yeah.
By yours?
Yes.
Okay. By my place, it's a mess. It's the most heavily saturated spot in Roseville just due to the location of the 2 churches. You have to take care of this or you're going to look dumb on the 5 o'clock news if there's a fire on Carl Place and it's in the minutes that I brought this up. Bring a fire truck out there. You can't do it. And you guys got to address this during the fair now, not next year, right? It's got to be done now. It's a public health hazard. And I've been living there for 60 years. And there's 3 residents that have been here more than 3 times discussing this. And it's got to be resolved. I don't owe the fair anything. And I don't owe the churches anything either that make the money off the parking rides. This is a huge inconvenience for just that 6-block area in Roseville, but nobody cares. You guys didn't care enough to call back, correct? I left messages for everyone. Like I say, Mr. Groff called back. None of you, I don't know, is that arrogance or insolence? And I don't mean to be arrogant, but it's the same thing every year. Every single year.
All right, we're at about 3 minutes and 30 seconds here. So if you
That's it.
Okay.
And I hope I don't have to come back again next year to repeat this because it's the same scenario every year. Drive by there tonight. You'll see. You cannot physically do it.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Groff, for your consideration on this when no one else seemed to care at all.
And I just want to check, Mr. Trudgeon, is there a process by which a neighborhood that has, I believe there's a restriction on parking on one side of the street, could request no parking on both sides of the street and have the city consider that?
Yes, we can certainly look at that, relook at that again. I know a few years ago when...
I understand it's based on a survey of the residents at the time that the original
Right.
restrictions were put in place, and there had to be some threshold of residents willing to do no parking altogether in order for that to be the case. So we should probably revisit it in this
Yeah, I think it's
particular
worthwhile
area.
to take another look at it.
Yep.
See what we can do this year, but certainly for next year.
All right, thank you. All right, with that, is there anyone else here for general public comment? All right, we'll go ahead and proceed with our agenda then, the rest of our agenda on this meeting. That brings us then to our recognitions and donations. We have one item under that category this evening, which is a proclamation in relation to Suicide and Overdose Awareness Month. And I'll read the proclamation, and then a motion from the council would be in order to approve it. The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the health and well-being of all Roseville residents is vital to the strength of our community, and far too many lives are impacted each year by substance use disorders, suicide, and overdose. And whereas September is recognized as National Recovery Month, a time to honor the resilience of individuals in recovery, raise awareness about mental health and substance use, and celebrate the strength of recovery support systems. And whereas International Overdose Awareness Day is on August 31st, and Suicide Prevention Awareness Day is on September 10th, and these are important times to honor lives lost and support those who are grieving and strengthen our communities to commitment to prevention, healing, recovery. And whereas Roseville is committed to being part of the solution, our police and fire departments work together with trained social workers to provide compassionate responses and long-term support by connecting individuals and families to care and services they need. And whereas this approach reflects Roseville's core values of community, equity, safety, integrity, and accountability, and demonstrates our belief that every person in our city deserves dignity, hope, and I lost my train of thought there. Dignity, hope, and access to resources that support their well-being. And whereas we honor the courage of those in recovery, the dedication of loved ones and professionals who support them, and the tireless efforts of first responders, healthcare providers, and community organizations working every day to save lives and strengthen families, now therefore be resolved that the City of Roseville hereby declares September as National Recovery Month and Suicide and Overdose Awareness Month, and encourages all residents to learn more about mental health and substance use, support those who are struggling or in recovery, and help foster a community where everyone feels connected, valued, and supported.
So moved.
Second.
All right, that's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder. Discussion on that motion. Councilmember Strawn.
I'd just like to mention that some of the families who brought this issue to me to begin with were unable to be with us this evening, but they had great appreciation for our taking the time to add this. And they were families who had been impacted by suicide in their immediate families, as well as mental health concerns. And I want to extend their appreciation for our adding this to our list of important acknowledgements and proclamations.
Thank you, Councilmember Strawn. Other discussion on the motion?
And I just want to add also that I'm glad they also have the substance use in here as well, because recovery, a lot of times when you do have other issues, the substance use is also part of that. So I'm glad it's all encompassing, so I'm glad to see it.
All right, thank you. And it is, thank you, Councilmember Strawn, for noting this is a new proclamation for the city, and we did work a fair amount to get it to incorporate and encompass all of these different aspects, and which happened in a similar time of the year. And so I think it worked out pretty well. And obviously, if we need to improve it, we can do that as well. But I think it's a worthwhile proclamation. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that proclamation is approved. We didn't have any items removed from consent this evening, so we're ready to move on with our business items. Our first business item this evening is to hold a public hearing to consider approving a liquor license for Breakthrough Rosedale LLC, which is located at 1595 Highway 36 in Roseville. Mr. Trudgeon for this item.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, we're here tonight to have a public hearing for proposed liquor license for Breakthrough Rosedale, which is an entity that provides entertainment and restaurant and drink services. They're going to be located in the Rosedale Mall. They're asking for a wine and 3-2 on-sale liquor license. The application is contained in the packet, and they have gone through all the review, and we are recommending approval of this wine and 3-2 on-sale liquor license to be granted to Breakthrough. I am not sure if representatives are here or not tonight. Somebody is in the audience if you have any questions about their operations.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. And once again, this is an on-sale license for a restaurant type or entertainment type
Correct.
establishment, as we have many of in the city. Are there questions from the council for staff on this requested license? Or for the applicant, for that matter? It does not appear to be the case. Does the representative or applicant wish to say anything in support of their case or just be available for questions? All right, they'll be available for questions. With that, then, this is a public hearing, and so we'll open the public hearing on this proposed liquor license in the city. This is once again a wine and 3-2 on-sale license for this establishment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak in support of or opposition to this proposed license? It does not appear to be the case. We'll go ahead then and close the public hearing and move to council consideration. We've got the application before us and the request. I note there is no outdoor endorsement being sought. There's also no extra hours being sought as well, so it's a pretty straightforward license.
It's my understanding, yes.
All right. With that then, what is the council's desire with respect to this license application?
I'd move approval. Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Bauer to approve the license as applied for in the materials we have. Discussion on the motion. As the maker of the motion, Councilmember Groff.
No, well, good luck with the business and hope it goes well.
Right, and as the seconder,
I would just second that and echo the, thank you very much for bringing this forward and wish you all the best.
right, other discussion on the motion? The only thing I would note is that we always do want to make sure that our license holders are well aware of our training requirements and documentation requirements, and the fact that we do a couple of compliance checks over the course of the year, and to be prepared for those. And obviously, we want our servers and managers to be well trained in proper identification of appropriate people of age to purchase the products. And so we will be confident that this is the last time we see you here, because you'll have your all your servers and trainers servers and managers well trained, and we won't have to see you again other than if we happen to be at your establishment. With that, we've got the motion before us to approve the license as applied for. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That license is approved. And we do wish you good luck. That then brings us to our second public hearing. This is a public hearing to consider certifying unpaid utility charges to the property tax roll. This is a matter that comes before the council, I believe, on a roughly quarterly basis. And so I'll turn it over to our finance director, who's in charge of the utility billing process and has the opportunity to bring these delinquent bills before us for approval to put on the tax rolls. And Ms. Petrick, please bring this item before us.
Attached is the third quarter report of unpaid utility charges. These accounts are more than 90 days past due when we bring them forward on a quarterly basis. And all the owner properties were notified. We do send out more letters than we do certify because we get about 40% of people who do pay. So this is the remaining list of accounts that are delinquent and will be certified to Ramsey County property taxes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Petrick. Are there any questions from the council on the information presented this evening for this hearing? All right, very good. Because it is a public hearing, we do want to provide an opportunity for members of the public to speak to this item. Once again, these are, as was noted by our finance director, over 90 days past due utility bills that what we do for collection of those is certify them to Ramsey County for addition to the property tax bill for the next collection time frame. That helps with the city being able to keep its water and sewer utility finances in reasonably good shape, at least when it comes to collecting the payments that are due to the city. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this item this evening? And I will note, I think if there was somebody here who wished to discuss their particular instance, we would probably remove that address from consideration and take up the rest. But it doesn't appear we have anybody here for this item. With that, then, we'll close the public hearing and move to council consideration. Is there a motion from the council?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff. And once again, this is to adopt the resolution in the packet, which does the act of certifying the listed bills to the county. That's the maker's motion?
Yes,
Correct. Okay. All right. With that, is there any discussion on the motion? Maker of the motion?
it's pretty straightforward.
All right. Seconder?
Please pay your utility bills. We don't like to do this. So we would appreciate everyone doing it so we don't have to do this. But if you don't, this is the way it's handled, and it will be collected eventually.
There you go. Other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the resolution certifying these properties to the property tax bills signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That list is approved. That brings us to probably one of our highlights for this evening, and that is our annual receiving of the city manager's recommended budget and tax levy for 2026. I'll try not to steal Mr. Trudgeon's, city manager's thunder as he's preparing his presentation. But I will just note that there are many steps remaining in the process. This is kind of one of the early steps of knowing what the shape of the budget and tax levy for 2026 will be, which will be followed by an action by the city council to certify a not-to-exceed levy to Ramsey County at the end of September. Then we will have our tax hearing the first week of December, December 1st, in fact, and then the final adoption of the budget December 8th is what our plan is as of our last council meeting. With that, I'll turn it over to City Manager Trudgeon to bring his recommended 2026 budget and tax levy information before the council this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Pleased to be here to be able to talk about the 26 proposed budget and levy. As you mentioned, this is the first step, first public-facing step of many that we have in front of us. As a department head team, we've been working on the budget really since early spring. And so this is a result of a lot of back and forth and conversations and looking at our needs and looking at what costs are and putting it together into a package that we're here in front of you tonight to propose. So I'll just get right into my presentation. As you mentioned, we do have some steps along the way. We're in the yellow highlighted area. We do have the not to exceed on September 22nd and the ultimate adoption on the 8th of December. So there's no formal action tonight. This is more for you all to receive the information, the public to hear what is being proposed. We do have roughly about a month before we need to hit the not to exceed date where we need to take some formal action as the council, and that's something that can be altered. The levy can be reduced but not increased after that point, so there's still room for conversations to look at sharpening the pencil to see what levy makes the most sense. A couple things I just want to mention before I jump into the whole presentation. So as you may have noticed, I approached my budget memo and the budget presentation a little bit differently than last year. You will find that I'm presenting something called a base budget, which is not a term we've used before, which really represents continuing funding all of our existing programs, services, and personnel. We know we have some really big asks for public safety personnel, and I wanted to make sure that we understood kind of what the basic operations of the city as it currently exists would cost to continue into the next year. And then we'll look at scenarios if we wanted to add those public safety personnel, what that would cost us and what the impact would be for the levy as well. So as we get into it, we'll talk about those different scenarios. As I mentioned, the base budget maintains all the existing programs, personnel, and services. It does not add any new staffing and does not reduce any staffing. Does not add any programs, does not reduce any programs. We do, however, see continued upward pressure on our costs, and as always, our biggest cost is typically personnel costs that go up year after year. So even maintaining the status quo of all the programs and employees, we will experience a cost increase. Another cost increase that's specific to this year is that we have funding, federal funding that has gone away from the COVID dollars, as well as state funding for public safety aid that we do need to backfill with levy dollars to maintain those existing programs. And we'll get into all those specifics here, but just wanted to introduce some of those topics before we get further into the budget. So a little bit about the overall budget. The overall budget is $81.2 million. It's about a 9.6% increase. The largest category for the budget is our personnel, which is about 32 million or 40% of the budget. We also have capital expenditures this year of 18 million, which is 23%. And then the next biggest category is utilities, which is 15% or $12 million. The utility charges are, in a lot of cases, pass-through dollars. That's the charges that we get from St. Paul Water for the water and that we bill out to our residents, as well as the sewer costs that are charged to us by Met Council, and we bill back out. But that is part of our budget. So for this year's memo, I have added some more detailed information by budget division about the expenditures, what's gone up and what's gone down, a little brief narrative explaining what that is all about. Hopefully that you find that helpful to understand kind of the components of our budget and kind of the process we go through each year to see what we can do to make some changes to the overall cost of the projects. So breaking down, cost of doing the operations for the city. Here is a table that does show, based on funds, kind of what is going to be for the budget for 2026, where we've made reductions, where there's been increases, and then the net cost. In your memo, it's much more detailed, as I mentioned, about the budget division, so this is just aggregated information. When we do work on the budget, we do work pretty hard to see where we can make reductions, get cost efficiencies, maybe do things differently to reduce our overall costs. But as you can see, very quickly, any headway we make with reductions are outpaced by the increases that are needed, whether it's personnel or other inflationary costs. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but I just wanted to make sure that the council understood that we do look at that every single year. So overall, there's a $7.1 million increase in the budget. And let me pause by saying the $7.1 million increase is not a levy increase. This is the overall budget. The levy makes up about 40% or so of the overall budget. So we have other revenue sources that come in. So I'm talking about the entire budget, not the levy. We'll focus on the levy here in just a second. So for the budget increase, once again, budget, not the levy increase, we have $7.1 million of levy increase. As you can see, personnel is a big chunk of that, $1.5 million. Once again, that's not all levy supported, but a big chunk of that is. You will see that the largest increase is our capital outlay. That's $4.4 million. And that's why the budget numbers do fluctuate each year depending on what our planned expenditures are for our capital funds. It's important to note that our capital funds are really using existing fund balance to pay for them each year. Each year we do put away dollars for future projects. So that does not translate into a $4.4 million levy increase. That is using some existing funds that we have in place. Now, of course, we do support our capital funds with levy increases, but I'm not proposing to increase any levy increases, and we'll get into that here in a second. So you can see how it does fluctuate, and if you look at this chart, you can see how it does fluctuate, and obviously the trend is upwards. But you can see back in 21, we had a $63 million budget. In the next 2 years, we had slightly less than that. And that was primarily reflected on maybe less capital expenditures. Then it starts going back up again. So every year it's going to fluctuate. What next year's budget is going to be hard to say. We can probably be assured it's going to have to go up, but the capital is going to be what's going to be really driving how much of an increase that's going to go up. Here are some newish charts that we started doing last year. There's a lot of information on there, and they're probably hard to read up on the screen there, but just want to show a couple of things. This first chart shows our revenue sources. We've gone back to 2016, and you can see that the kind of orangish reddish color this is our revenue sources once again. This is our tax levy. And then the next one is charges for services, which is a dark blue. That's the utility charges. That's the water and sewer charges and other fees that we may be charging our property owners. Up here are some different categories that you can kind of read, maybe not directly on this slide here. And so this just shows you kind of by a quick graphic look about kind of where our money is coming from. And as I mentioned, we're not totally funded by levy. About 40% or so of our budget is funded by levy, and the rest of it is all these different colors here. On the expenditure side, you can see kind of the trends as it goes. Our two largest categories are personnel costs. So this is the blue. You can see how that's risen over the years. and then also our capital, which is the lighter blue, and which does fluctuate each year. We did deaggregate some other category from previous years to these different colors here, so that's why you're seeing the different colors, but they mostly correlate with this blue as you combine the purple and the green if you were looking at it closely. So just kind of see over time and trends and kind of where we're spending our money from, or where we're spending our money for. So let's shift from talking about the budget, which is the overall document that is our spending plan, to our levy, which is a portion of our budget that that we get revenue from directly from taxpayers. So we are seeing higher costs overall. I would mention again, when I talk about the base budget levy, I'm not including adding the additional public safety personnel. This is just the status quo of what we're doing now. So overall, I'm proposing a levy increase of 7.87%, or about $2.4 million more to the existing levy. This results in a levy of $33.1 million, which is part of that $81 million budget. The chart on the right does show our levy increases since 2020, and you can note that I typically like to bring them in a little bit less than what I'm even bringing in tonight here, but there's factors that drive why the levy is what it is. You will recall, if you've been on the council for a while, that in past years we've had a significant amount of dollars of federal funds and other state funds that can help patch together the budget. Those funds are for the most part gone, and we've tried to plan for them, but still we need to start backfilling the use of those grant funds. That 8.99%, if you recall, that's when we implemented the employee compensation plan, so that was a little bit more expensive than it typically is. So this is the breakdown of what is actually driving that levy increase, which once again is $2.4 million. The largest portion is the personnel, $1.2 million of the levy increase is towards that. And then also the next biggest one is the revenue and fund balance and use changes. So let's just dive into those a little bit deeper to understand what's behind those numbers. So for the personnel costs, the larger costs are two factors. One is the employee wage steps. We have a compensation system where employees, based on good performance, go through a series of steps within their grade and get additional income. Their wages are increased. So there's a normal process of every year people going through those steps. We also have insurance costs, which we budget for 5%. It looks like our insurance costs will be much higher than that, but 5% is what we as the employer typically chip in. We also have the cost of living adjustment, which you can see is almost $600,000. That is something we do annually to make sure we remain competitive with other competitors in other cities, and that is a 3% COLA across the board for both union and non-union. A new thing that we have to plan for is the paid family medical leave. That is a cost to the employer and the employee. There's a case later on tonight where you'll see there's a contract we're looking to do with MetLife. And this $87,000 represents the employer portion of that. This is a brand new cost that hasn't been in past budgets, and this is something we'll have to continue to have in the budget each year moving forward as long as the law is in place. We do continue to see overtime increases. I know our chiefs especially work really hard to get that down, but the fact is that we need coverage. When we need coverage and we have a significant events, we need to make sure folks are in. There are other things such as leave that factors into it. Paid family leave is a perfect example where we're going to have people out for longer periods of time, and that does impact our minimum staffing. So that's something that we really try to work hard on reducing, but unfortunately that's where we're at for this budget cycle. The police intern wage increase, we have to make some adjustments there to be competitive. And the HR manager, we have to pay for the full year of that in the 25 budget. The council authorized a half year for that position, so we need to backfill that for the other half. So that's what that cost is. So all told, $1.2 million of that levy of the 2.4 is coming from personnel. The next biggest category is the fund balance and grant use changes. This is kind of a catch-all of a couple different things. I talked a lot about how we had state and federal dollars used in the past that no longer exist. One big chunk we don't have really much left of anymore, and the remaining portion of that's already factored into this budget, is public safety aid. This is the state of Minnesota money. Last year we did use it for a couple things. We used it to shore up pay for fire cadets. We also added a police department commander position, and we used half levy and half public safety aid. We also funded Tubman, which was just in front of the council, for $20,000 as part of that, and we also had settled union contracts. I would mention that this levy increase, as mentioned, does include Tubman. That's still a conversation the council needs to have as far as whether or not to fund them, but just for transparency's sake, that is already factored in at this point. It's not really a budget increase because it was in the budget last year, but the source was public safety aid. It wasn't levy dollars. If we include it this year, it would have to come from levy dollars. So that all told is $251,000. We also, for our police department social workers, we were able to patch together lots of different funds to make it happen, including grants. But the net cost for us to keep our 2 social workers in the police department, which I think we have found to be very successful and really a great approach for us to continue to do, is $257,000. We do have some offsetting grants, which you can see the state aid, grant revenue, and other increases of $150. But it only covers, if I remember right, through half of the year in 2026. So it doesn't get us all the way there for that, but it certainly helps. And then finally, we did have the Park and Recreation Fund balance used last year and to the tune of $220,000. As we looked at that fund, we thought that fund could maybe, we could utilize that to offset any levy increases. So the decisions we made in past years to try to manage that levy do eventually have to come back. And so this has been factored in here. So all told, about $580,000 would go from existing fund balances or grant funds to the levy. And once again, this is just keeping what we're doing currently. Some of the other categories I can get through a little bit quicker here. The debt service, you're very familiar with that. We bonded for electric fire engine, and this is the annual debt service, which is going to be new for this year, starting in 2026, I should say. And that represents, just so you know, about 1% levy increase. About every $300,000 is a 1% levy increase. We do see some decrease in supplies and materials. Fortunately, winters have been cooperating, so we don't need as much salt and sand, so that works to our benefit. Utilities are just minor costs. These are things for our facilities for utility costs. And contractual services did go up. We've had some significant increase, especially with Ramsey County Dispatch, another $66,000 there. Metro INET goes up, and just generally the contracts have gone up over time, so that has added up. And then some miscellaneous other changes of $36,000. So this is what I showed you before, but this just kind of shows you all the building blocks of why that levy increase is $2.4 million. So now I'm going to discuss some budget and levy scenarios regarding the addition of the 15 firefighters and the 7 police department employees. We'll take a look at what those costs are estimated to be, both with receiving grant funds and not having grant funds. And then I will also then discuss a non-tax levy funding source, namely utility franchise fees, that could be implemented to lower the overall tax levy, increase the need for increase the public safety staffing if that is desired to be added into the budget. So regarding the public safety personnel, what has been asked by the chiefs, and both of these have been presented to the council earlier this year. So for the fire department, looking to add 15 firefighters, or 5 to each of our 3 shifts. They would start September 2026 in an effort to try to minimize the cost for 2026. The total cost for those 15 firefighters is $708,000. We have submitted a SAFER grant to fund this for 3 years for a large portion of these personnel costs. And if we were to receive that grant, $531,000 of that $708,000 would be paid through the grant, leaving the city with $177,000 to make up with the levy. And That's assuming we get the grants. And I know you're all aware of the timing of the grant. Unfortunately, it's going to probably fall after when we have to set the not to exceed levy increase. We'll probably learn sometime in October. So we're not going to have knowledge before then whether or not we get the grants. If we don't get the grants, then we're looking at a $708,000 levy increase just for those 15 firefighters in. That's just part of the year. It's not the full year. For the police department staffing, the chief asked for 4 police officers, 2 patrol sergeants, and 1 record supervisor. The total cost for all those positions, including benefits, is $1 million. We do have a pending grant that would pay for at least one of those officers for $167,000. So if we were to get that, our net costs for the city would be $836,000. If we don't get that grant, $1 million. Similar to the SAFER grants, the COPS grant isn't going to be known until October. So we're going to be a little bit blind going into not to exceed. We're not going to know whether or not we have these. So, long story short is if we do get the grants, we're looking at about $1 million, $13,000 to add to the levy, and then without the grants, it's 1.7. So what that means is a significant increase on the levy. So I've created some tables that are in your memo. So just starting on the left, this is the base budget that I just got finished talking about. The levy is $33 million, $2.4 million increase, and that results in a 7.87% levy increase that I mentioned before. Scenario 1 is the same base budget levy, but assuming we get the grants, so it'd be $177,000 for the fire positions and $836,000 for the police, which would lead to a $3.4 million levy increase, or 11.17% levy increase. Scenario 2 is if we don't get the grants, so the costs are significantly higher. So you can see the math there, and that gets us to a 13.44% levy increase. Those are pretty difficult levy amounts that I think is going to be a real challenge for any of us to get behind, including me. I think that's just a very significant amount here. But just want to go through the exercise to demonstrate what that would be if we were to add all of that together. So I want to introduce the possibility of imposing franchise fees, which would go on the bills of electric and gas utility customers. It's really an alternative revenue source, and yes, it does come from residents and businesses in our community, but it is through the utility bill, not tied to property taxes or value of your home. So we do have an additional agenda item coming up after this about the more general conversations about franchise fees, but they would be, we'd work with Excel to have an ordinance adopted to create franchise fees, and it's really about their use of our right-of-way to provide electric and gas services. And certainly, they're a business and they make money off of doing that. So, and it costs us to maintain the right-of-way. So it seems reasonable to have some type of fee for that use. The franchise fees are actually commonly used in most cities in Minnesota. In fact, I think we're one of the few, if not the only one in Ramsey County that does not have franchise fees currently. Once again, we'll talk a lot more about that in the next one. Just to be clear, this is not free money. It's something that does come from customers, utility customers. It does cover everybody from single-family homes to businesses to non-tax-paying entities such as churches and schools and things like that. So it does cast a wider net, but it is something that residents will be paying more. We think we can have those in place and be able to provide more services without raising the taxes where we need to be by using franchise fees and a combination of levy support to do some really great things with both our immediate budget but also in the long-term budget. We will be making some comparisons on what those cost differentials would be between if we put everything on the levy versus using franchise fees once we get more data from Ramsey County here at the end of August, beginning of September, to really show what the median impact would be for folks doing that. There are some steps. Okay, I went too fast there. there are some steps we need to take before we get there. So, in talking to Excel, this is just showing some information about the amount of dollars that could be generated by a variety of franchise fees. So you see 3 options there, and they can be different numbers. I really focus on the residential amount, and so what option 1 is showing a $3 charge per month on an electric bill for a residential unit, and a $3 charge for gas services, or a total of $6 a month to the residents. And then there's commercial and industrial fees, as you can see, as they're listed, and that's based on the use of the electricity or the gas. So if we had a $3 residential fee on electric and gas, that'd be $2.1 million that would be generated. And that would, for the average, for every residential account, not average, every residential account would be charged the same. That's $72 per year. You can see option 2 at $350 gets $2.4 million, and option 3 gets $2.8 million. So that is a significant amount of revenue that we could put in play for our capital needs for our infrastructure. And so let's walk through that a little bit. So my thought is to use the franchise fees to fund 4 funds that directly support the right-of-way. That is our pavement management fund, our streetlight fund, our pathway and parking lot fund, and our public works equipment fund. All told, all 4 of those currently receive $1.6 million of tax levy every year into that fund to make sure it's whole, that make sure we have enough dollars to pay for the needed equipment, not only for this year and next year, but for many years down the road. So for the next slide, I've used the $2.1 million amount. That is that $3 a month charge for gas and $3 for electric for the analysis here. So the basic idea would be to replace that $1.6 million of levy support going towards those 4 capital funds, which are pavement management, streetlight fund, pathway and parking, and public works equipment and vehicle fund, and swap that out with the $2.1 million we'd be getting from the franchise fees. Of that $1.6 million, I would look to reallocate $545,000 of that 1.6 and be that we're saving from using the franchise fees and the right-of-way infrastructure funds, and put them into 4 different funds: the police department vehicle and equipment fund, fire department vehicle and equipment fund, the parks vehicle and equipment fund, and the park improvement fund. We'd also want to keep $100,000 of that existing levy remaining in the public works equipment fund. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out, so we'll get to a table that hopefully will explain it. That would leave us $986,000 of that $1.6 million to reallocate onto the operation side that could help us pay and reduce the levy increase for the public safety personnel. So hopefully this table helps a little bit, and I'll walk through this. So here are the 4 right-of-way infrastructure funds that I've identified. Here's the $1.6 million that we're currently using levy for. What I would propose, instead of putting $1.1 million of levy funds into the pavement management fund, put $1.36 million into the that fund of franchise fees. Streetlight fund, $21,000 currently in the levy, put $96,000 in franchise fees. Pathway and parking lot, currently $255,000 of levy, swap that out and have $365,000. Then the public works, we currently have $235,000 of levy going in. Keep $100,000 in there, but also add $285,000 of franchise fees for a total of $385,000. So you can see we're going from, for those 4 funds, instead of putting $1.6 million each year, we're putting $2.2 million a year. These lower part of the table here shows these 4 other funds that we reallocate levy towards. So you can see the current levy amounts for each of these funds that go in annually at $1.6 million. A lot of $1.6 million here, but these are different numbers. I would look to reallocate $545,000 as shown, another $225 in police department, $120 in the fire department vehicle, $100,000 for both park improvement fund and the park department vehicle and equipment fund. So if you just kind of tally that up, we have existing levy of $1.631 million that go into the right-of-way capital funds. I would take that and swap that out with franchise fees, reallocate or use 645,000 of those dollars into other funds that are the four funds, the police, fire, parks funds, leaves $986,000. So when you add all this up, we go from $3.25 million when you combine these two annual funds going into those capital funds, and to 4.37 million, or an increase of $1.1 million of funds going towards our capital needs. One thing I haven't talked about in this whole budget on the levy impact is increasing our levy amount. We all know our funds, several funds need some help, both short-term and long-term. There just isn't room under the base budget levy to add additional levy amounts. This is really a way to not only stabilize what we have now, maybe pay for public safety personnel, but really for the future set us up very nicely. Let me talk through that a little bit. So the pavement management fund, we would replace the $1.1 million of levy support with 1.36. The fund goes from being negative, this is how it currently looks right now, in 2036, to being fully funded through just about 2044. For the streetlight fund, we would swap out 21,000 of levy support to 96,000 of franchise fees. It goes from being severely negative in 2029 and beyond to be fully funded through 2045. There's just a small little negative balance about 2029, 2030. I think we can manage through that. The pathway and parking fund, we swap out the levy with franchise fees, and it goes from being negative, this is how it looks now, to be fully funded through 2045. So once again, being negative, being fully funded. Public Works Vehicle and Equipment Fund. Swap out the levy with franchise fees and retaining 100,000 of levy. Goes from being negative in 2028 to being fully funded through 2045. So pretty dramatic change. So this is using the franchise fees directly into those four funds. The next four funds, this is where we're going to reallocate the levy here. So for the police department vehicle fund, it already gets 225,000. We'll add another 300,000 for a total of 525,000, and it goes from being negative in 2026 to a positive balance in 2029. Now that doesn't look as dramatic as the other ones. I'll grant you that, and we'd hope to be better. And this is something we'll need to continue. But if you look at where we're heading, we're down to maybe $7.5 million in the hole in 20 years. We're down to about $3 million. Still significant work we need to do. We need to keep addressing that, but I think we've certainly been able to deal with something that was going to be pending next year. We'd be negative. To extend that for another 3 years to allow us to keep working on strategies, whether it's this budget cycle or future budget cycles. The fire department vehicle and equipment, we're going to add some additional levy to that, and that goes from looking like this, negative in 2035, to, and being significantly negative beyond that, to being a little bit better. Still 2035 is an inflection point. We go a little bit negative there, which maybe we can manage, not really significantly negative until the 2040s. As you know, we just borrowed for the electric fire engine, so I think borrowing is certainly a strategy to be using for this to help manage some of those costs, but certainly is better than it was in the past. And the last two, Park and Recreation Vehicle and Equipment Fund, we'd add $100,000 or more levy. Goes from being negative in 2028 to being fully funded through 2045. So once again, negative, positive. And then the Park Improvement Fund, add another $100,000. This does a lot of stuff in our parks, including our playgrounds. This goes from being negative in 2033 to being slightly negative in 2036 and 37, which once again I think we can manage, and then being fully funded through 2045. So, where does that get us? With all those changes, I've added two more scenarios, scenario 3 and 4. And so scenario 3 is assuming we get the grants for the public safety positions. So the cost for the fire department would be $177, just like scenario 1. Whoops, should click up. 177, same as scenario 1, and same with the police department positions. But remember that levy amount that we freed up by using the franchise fees, $986,000, that would offset the needed increase to fund those positions, which would have been 11.17, down to 7.96. Remember, the base budget is 7.87%. So we would not only be able to do the base budget, but also add all that personnel for slightly less than an 8% increase. Scenario 4, because we have to do it, is if we don't get the grants, we're looking at a 10.23% levy increase, which is still pretty steep. Whenever you hit double digits, that's something that we would have to pause. But I wanted to demonstrate these different scenarios for the council to think through a little bit about where we want to land for a levy amount, but also what we want to be able to fund in the 2026 budget. Obviously, receiving grant dollars is something that's really important. So speaking of those grants, the grants don't last forever, and as I talked about some of the challenges we have now, is we're backfilling. So one idea, and this is just one of perhaps many, is that we could look at implementing slightly higher franchise fees. If you remember through my examples, I used the $3 residential charge, which got $2.1 million. The other side of the chart had a $4 a month, that got $2.8 million. We could possibly, and this is a lot more discussion needs to happen, raise $2.8 million of franchise fees, start collecting that in 26, put that for the time being into the capital funds, and that just strengthens the capital funds. And starting in budget year 2027, when we have to pay for the full year of the fire department staffing, so it's going to be much more than the $170,000, we could take some of that franchise fees from the capital and put it on the operating side, like the streets division that's covering the maintenance of the streets. It pays for the snowplow drivers and all that stuff there. That would free up some levy capacity that we can then use to apply towards those fire department costs. That's just one example. We haven't gone through all the scenarios and how that would look, but I just want to raise that up because while we're happy to get grant funds, there's at some point we're going to have to pay, and I think that's still going to be a significant cost. When we did add additional firefighters several years ago, we did add levy each year to the amount of like $200,000 to build some capacity when we're off the grant, that we already had some levy within it, so we didn't have to do 1 year big shock raise. So this would be a similar method, but just a different way to think about it. And then the budget years 28 and 29, we can continue to look at how we can reallocate some funds to put on the operating side. The franchise fees, as long as they're in place, are sustainable and be coming to the city every single year. So it's not one-shot money. It's something that would come forward for a period of time. Most, I think maybe it's state law, I'm not sure, but franchise agreements are typically 20 years long. So you're looking at least a 20-year window on how to do that. I think it's really critical, if we wanted to fund those positions, really look at how we best can utilize non-levy funds to help support. It may not cover 100% of those costs of the public safety personnel, but it can go a long way towards helping those costs. All right, just about done here. So next steps, here's the dates. I am going to the Finance Commission this Wednesday night to present the budget to the Finance Commission, and on the 15th of September, the Finance Commission will come back with their recommendations on my budget and proposals. On the 22nd, as been mentioned several times, we need to have a preliminary city and EDA tax levy and budget. We'll look at utility rates, which I haven't talked about at all here, but that's an annual thing that we do look at every year, adjusting the rates. We'll have the public hearing for the budget on December 1st and look to adopt the final budget on December 8th. And I'll just put this last slide up. This is just kind of covering the basics of what the budget is, what the levy amount is, and kind of what those levy increases would be, and then just what the drivers of the levy cost for the base budget. So with that, I will pause to see if there's any questions the council has, and be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon, for your presented budget and for all the work that you and your staff and department heads have gone into over the last several months to put together the budget to recommend to the council and the public this evening. Are there questions from the council for staff on the proposed recommended 2026 budget? Councilmember Schroeder.
Would you repeat, when will you have the information, the franchise fees versus the property taxes? So if it was on property taxes instead of franchise fees, when would that information be available?
So my understanding, there's a meeting with the county on September 3rd or something like that, so it'll be sometime next week. We'd probably get that preliminary information, then we'll have to quickly crunch the numbers. So I would think by the end of next week or the start of the week after that, we'd be able to have that. And I'll shoot that out to everybody, so you have that immediately, and then incorporate that into the documents, both for the 15th and the 22nd on that. We're waiting for some final calculations about fiscal disparities, so it's just, we're pretty close, but we just want to make sure we have the exact numbers.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, the question was related to the impact to the average property owner for the property tax versus looking at the
Yeah.
$6 or $8 a month
Yeah, right.
of utility franchise fees by comparison.
Right, yeah, once we have that information, we can start sharing those impacts.
All right. Other questions for the staff? So I did ask Mr. Trudgeon to do a couple of things which showed up in the bench handout this evening for the council. And that was, as was noted in the presentation, with the use of the franchise fees, the gas and electric franchise fees, the plan as presented also includes an increase in capital spending to shore up the capital funds, as was noted, of roughly about $1.12 million per year as part of that. And so I had asked Mr. Trudgeon what the difference would be if we, instead of using franchise fees, if we use the property tax levy to get that $1.12 million. And in the bench handout, instead of scenario 1, which was if we do all the public safety positions but we get the grants, that was about 11.1% increase to the tax levy. It would go to about just under 15% if we added $1 million of capital spending under levy funding. And then also scenario 2, which is if we don't get any grants for the public safety, that was about 13.4% levy increase with the public safety. If we also added the increase to the levy to cover the additional capital spending of $1.12 million, that was about a 17% levy increase. And the only reason I did that was to compare to, ultimately, when we get the information on the franchise costs for the average taxpayer, what that might look like. And just my initial analysis, which doesn't have all of the Ramsey County work related to fiscal disparities, and hopefully the final projection is that in that scenario, if we did fund the additional $1.1 million, it would be a little bit less per month for the average household using the franchise fees for funding as opposed to using the levy for all of the additional capital funding. Now, I suppose one of our options too is to have a smaller franchise fee, not do as much capital. We could do any number of different approaches, and that's part of our decision-making process as we go forward. But I did want to just provide that for comparison purposes because of the fact that there's sort of two things going on with the franchise fee discussion. One is the use of the franchise fees for capital purposes frees up some existing levy capacity that could be used instead of for capital purposes for offsetting some of these increases related to public safety. But then there's also, because the franchise fee, as it's proposed at $3 per resident for gas and $3 for electric, would provide more funding than the gap on the capital funding, or the gap on the on the public safety funding. Then that proposal is, if we do the franchise fees, to also do some additional capital funding to shore up those funds. And so it wasn't exactly apples to apples in terms of the comparison, and that was just my point, was that we have to keep in mind some of those moving pieces, and it's hard enough for us to keep straight as well as the members of the public, but I did want to try to explain that. And I was debating whether to show a graph this evening because sometimes people are visual thinkers, but maybe I'll hold off on that since we're receiving the city manager's recommendation this evening. But it does. The upshot is that our levy funds both capital and operations, and both capital and operations are also funded by other sources. And so seeing how the levy goes up and down and how the capital funding and the the not and the operations funding go up and down relative to each other may be helpful to do visually, but I think that's something that that I'll have to review more with the city manager and finance staff before that becomes something we share as theoretically a helpful thing for the public in considering all this. But I just wanted to note that once again for the comparison that the franchise fee approach is not only helping to address the costs related to the public safety operational costs, but also has sort of a bonus to that because the amount that could be collected as presented by Excel is greater than that differential that we could also address these capital issues as well. So I just wanted to note that wouldn't be, the capital solution wouldn't be part of either the base budget or scenario 1 or scenario
Correct.
2 without the franchise fees, because the franchise fee approach is what gives us the funds to help address those capital needs. And we can certainly get into more detail about that, or if residents or folks have questions, we can try to help them understand that. Were there other questions from the council for staff at this time? Councilmember Bauer.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question about the, you said 300,000 is about 1%. I ask because if I'm looking here at, in the packet was the preliminary base budget, and appreciate bringing together all that detail. Looking at that, typically our fund balances, we try to keep them at 50%, I think is the most in any of our funds. Looking at the EDA one, it's at about, what, 200% right now? That's, and it looks like you're proposing funding $450,000 in that, when the fund balance right now is 2024, 930,000. Does it make sense to fund that or just to draw down? I mean, the EDA is unique because you can't really transfer out of it, but I wonder if we should just not fund, expense it or fund it for this year to bring it back down into our normal cash reserve levels. I'm concerned that cash reserve is continuing to grow, and looking at the past years, I'm not seeing any changes in expenditures and whatnot, and that would be saving possibly over 1%.
Yep. So thanks for bringing that up. So, and I should mention that when I talk about the overall levy impact, I'm including any impact on the EDA levy, which is actually down by, is it $30? And you can't remember off the top of my head here, but we're still taxing for it, to your point, Councilmember Bauer. Couple of things, and I don't have the exact breakdown, and I think it's important that maybe we bring that back and have that discussion. That 900,000 fund balance is more than just the operating fund. I think it has some of the other EDA funds. So I'd really like to look at that breakdown to understand that a little bit. Certainly, we can always look at fund balance and trade that off of levying for it, and that's something we try to look at. The EDA, the operating side, we want to make sure we do have some cash flow, just like our general fund, because we get those payments twice a year. We can figure what that would need to be here. So I think there's maybe some possibility to look at that. I would just caution that if we go from 400,000 to 0, we're going to have to eventually levy that back up. So in future years, it's going to be an increase. So it would have to be a measured approach. But if it would be all right, I would maybe when we talk about the EDA budget, just bring back kind of that breakdown of that fund, of what that 900,000 is. I don't know if it's half and half of the operating, or I don't know what it is off the top of my head here. So
I had the same question, which is why I brought it up here. So I'd be happy to have that conversation in the
yeah,
future.
I think it's worthwhile to have that just to make sure we're looking at under every stone to make sure we can lower that levy the best we can.
Thank you.
And just if I may, on clarification on that too, the impact as we change the EDA levy isn't exactly the same as if we change the property tax levy, the more general property tax levy, only because the EDA levy is levied across a different set of payers than the rest of the property tax levy. So the impact per household, so to speak, is a little different. So that would be another factor to kind of look at as we're looking at that as well, because it may not be the 300,000 impact that we might be thinking it is potentially. Councilmember Shore.
It's interesting that you brought up the EDA, because I actually had that conversation with the city manager today. I too had questioned that, and actually there's two pieces to that. Is one, and there's that, do you go from the extreme, but you could also do increments too. So, 100 each year or whatever. But then the other piece was, like you said, most funds have our policies basically say our cash reserve is a percentage of the next year's budget. And I believe our general fund, the high end is 50%. but I don't believe our EDA is at 200%. So the question is, what should that be for the EDA fund, considering the general fund is at 50? So that might be something as you're presenting to the Finance Commission, because they're the ones that tend to look at that policy, to maybe ask them what they would recommend that should be at. Because I think I've brought this up over a number of years, and because we don't have a policy on, it's hard to know where that should be.
Right, right.
And I know you cannot spend it on other things, but like you had mentioned, you could not fund it or fund it less and then have that balance come down. But it would be good to get the Finance Commission's view on it as well.
Certainly worth a conversation. I think we want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. So the EDA general fund, for the lack of
Yes.
a better word, we'd have to look at what that fund balance is versus
Right.
some other funds.
And that's why maybe if they look at it, they can get into more of the detail as well.
Yeah.
Councilmember Bauer.
Thank you. I do appreciate the detail, the little blurbs you put for each of the funds. Looking through it, I'm looking at, just pick one here, the recreation fee programs. You know, in all these ones, you correctly mentioned that there's a 3% COLA on all these. Looking at like fee programs or fee-related ones, have we also increased all the fees accordingly so that these become neutral? I was trying to look through the budget and match revenues to expenses, but sometimes it's rather difficult.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the
it's pretty
se-
aggregated what you see there. We do have, we did raise fees, and I don't have it right in front of me. I know Mr. Johnson's here. I'm not expecting him to, off the top of his head, know, but we can share that information with the council on where we raise fees. I think generally is a few percentage, if nothing else, and there were some cases where it might have been higher based on. on
I was just looking to see if we actually covered, you know, the expenses for these, and we try to make these cost neutral for us.
Well, we try to.
As much as possible. I'm not looking for them to be
Yeah, 'cause
like-
you want to make sure you don't cost people out of the
Right.
thing, so it's always a fine balance, but we'll have Mr. Johnson respond to the council on
And
that.
this goes along with, I think you mentioned earlier, with Metro INET increasing their fees, but I believe Metro INET uses our city fiber lines, which you also noted we had an increase because of locate costs and things.
Yep.
We'd hope that we're charging them, increase the costs and the fees to match that as well.
Well, we try to match it up the best we can. Sometimes there's this lag in time as you're doing
Right.
those things, and you know, just in regards to Metro INET, quite a lot of that's pass-through costs for licensing. Everything's a subscription now, if you all know that. So instead of having an annual or a capital cost, it's more of an annual operating cost, and that's for all the members. It's been a big problem as those costs have gone up. Microsoft is
Just want to make sure it's our costs increase that we're passing those along
Yeah.
to those that utilize our resources and services as best as we can.
If I, just on the Parks and Recreation fee programs or fee-supported programs, if I remember right, or maybe the overall Parks and Recreation operating budget, it's roughly 50-50 between property tax and the fees.
Yep.
And so I think the idea is that we don't necessarily want to upset that balance excessively, because that, you know, that's
Right.
harder for fee payers to pay potentially, but it's all part of the mix in terms of discussing all of that.
It is. Yep.
Yeah.
It's all part of the conversation for
And
sure.
I mean, there was an increase, I think, I saw somewhere in here, I could be wrong, but like an increase in scholarships as well.
Yes, 5,000 more this year. It's a total of 15. It was 10.
Yep.
Right?
That's
Councilmember Schroeder?
what I was going to add, is that the
Okay.
scholarship went up to help offset some of the fees.
And the scholarship is supported by other revenues
Right.
into the program, yeah.
Right.
yeah. Councilmember Bauer?
Sorry, I will get through my questions, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
This may, in that same blurb where you're outlaying all the funds, there's a capital outlay funds, and one thing that did catch my eye is the building replacement fund. You noticed a reduction of $361,000 from 1.2, or the budget being 1.2 reductions. I thought if you could just expand on that, where that came from.
Yeah, it's really, so that's just the total of amount of spending in the facilities fund year over year. So in 2025, I'm getting my years correct here, we're spending 304, what's the number, 350?
I only have the 26 number here.
Yeah, $350,000 less compared to 25. So if you remember our CIPs, each year we have listing of projects. So the projects in 25 are costing X amount, and the projects in 26 are costing that $350,000 less. That's all it is, just an aggregate. So if you were to look at and it's in one of the division handouts. I'm trying to remember what page number it is. You can see kind of what expend for facilities in 25 was the capital funds, was X amount, and the 26 is just gone down
Page
350,000.
29, attachment C.
Yeah, page 29, attachment C.
3.
Yeah, what I wanted to
I
make
asked the
sure was
same
that we're not
question.
deferring some, that wasn't a deferral or something like that we're doing.
you know-
Rather, it was just what we had planned, and
It's
it's
what we
a
had
normal
planned,
fluctuation.
yeah. And, you know, and it's a good point. Every year, we do look at all the capital things, and we don't spend when we don't need to spend, and we do defer often if we can. Sometimes we have to move things up because things break and everything like that. So, you know, so what's proposed in 26 is what we believe we need to have, and that just happens to be $300,000 less than what we needed to spend in 25. They're completely different things we're doing each year, right? So it's not the same thing costs $300,000 less. It's just the aggregate of the projects in 25 with this, and it's $300,000 less in 26.
I'm glad you mentioned that deferral because I know in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the past we've deferred some things, I think with some public works projects and things for a couple of years. Do we look at doing any kind of deferrals from, I'm not saying public works because we've deferred enough there, but like other areas to defer to help with reducing that base budget number?
Well, the base budget, not the levy, the base budget number is where it would come into place, because if we're using capital funds, that's money we already have. So yes, we always do look at that, everything from vehicles, do we need to replace a vehicle as soon, or equipment, to playgrounds is another one that we look at every single year. If, you know, we wanted a perfect world, we'd be doing things a lot quicker, and we try to make sure things can last longer and not spend the money as quickly, so we do defer a lot of things, and like I said, sometimes we have to move some things up. So it's an annual exercise actually throughout the whole year, even if it's scheduled for 25, let's say, and we get to that point, and we think, you know, we think we can probably get along for another couple of years, and then we'll defer that. But we also try to do that at the front end too, so going into the year, we know what we do or don't do. But all that will do is if we defer it, that will just, the overall budget, the big number, might be a little bit less in capital expenditures. Oftentimes, though, I want to say that even if we defer something, there's something else that might be moved up.
Which is why we defer it.
Yeah,
like in the
yeah,
first
yeah. So you
place.
kind of do the swap here, and so the net might not be any different, or might be a little bit higher, just because that thing you have to move up is more expensive than what
It's
you.
more of an exercise to try to smooth things out.
Yeah, yeah. You really
over
want to
time.
smooth.
Is all that would we would achieve by doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Mr. Trudgeon, if you could bring up from your presentation those graphs on you can pick any one of the capital funds.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to go through that a little bit.
Yeah, I just closed it here, so let me get it up. Okay, wait there.
It takes a while, yeah.
Thinking. Okay.
So, and this was this kind of relates to the discussion that was just had. So the red bars on the graph are the annual planned expenditures of when we expect to replace various sections or segments of roadway in our pavement management fund, as this is. So essentially, and then the green is the annual revenue. And in this case, we have revenue from tax levy, we have revenue from state aids and things like that, so that can account for some of the fluctuation. But generally speaking, what we're trying to do, as far as the city finances, is set aside a little bit of money each year into essentially our savings account, like people might do if you're planning to do a major expense in your home. And that is what the green represents. And the problem we've had, as this particular graph shows, is that the amounts that we plan to set aside and have been setting aside haven't been keeping up with the way the costs are going. And so that's what we're challenged with, is to try to make sure that we're accounting for that. And just like in our home, if it's a big enough expenditure, we may look to borrow money for it, as was noted earlier. For instance, for a large, $2 million fire engine, it's hard to set aside $2 million over 20 years and then pay cash for it necessarily, although we still try to do that in most cases on our capital needs.
Yep.
But I guess the point being is that, as it was discussed just prior to this, as we start to shift some of the red bars left and right, or some pieces, components of them, the impact may or may not be that significant as it affects the overall program, but it may help in a particular year. The challenge is, to the extent that we're paying for those expenditures with savings we've already made, the impact to what it might be on the tax levy at that given year is where we don't necessarily see as much impact as we might otherwise because we're using savings to pay for those things oftentimes. So that's the challenge I think that this whole discussion brings up. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of a visual aid to help with that, or make it more confusing depending on your point of view. Other questions from the council? Councilmember Bauer.
That's good you brought that up because, and I'm glad that we have this graph up too, because you mentioned in your proposed budget a comment about, as you mentioned, starting to use debt for some of these things. Do you have, or you probably don't have, but a plan of how to use that or a policy that you're thinking that would work? Because that very much would factor into this. We're talking about using a combination possibly of franchise fees and now possibly increasing our amount of debt, which we have a lot of capacity for and probably does make sense to do. It seems like we should actually have a policy or a financial plan, a model or something like that before we just start running into and doing these kinds of things. Especially when we're if we were to do that, transitioning from something where we kind of prepay for this stuff to that transition period can get very interesting if we don't do the proper financial analysis.
Yes, so we have, the finance director and I have done an initial sit-down and looked really at 27 and 28 expenditures, about what potentially, from the certain funds that could be potentially have debt issue for. You're looking for something that is a longer-term asset, not something that's going to need to be replaced within 5 years, something longer, because you want to have the length of time to pay for it. So we've identified some of those and what that impact would be. I think we need to do further analysis. We really didn't bring it to bear in the 26 budget because it's right here in
I
front
wouldn't
of us.
expect to be ready.
Yeah, so 27, 28, we've already kind of penciled in some things that we want to look at further. I think it's important, though, that we have that discussion with the council and the finance commission about here's some ways to approach it. And what's the trade-off? Because you are adding more debt levy to it, and so if you have, versus having funds in place, you just got to play that through a little bit and understand what that flow is. My personal sense too, I think it was even more critical to look at that prior to discussing franchise fees to stretch your dollars more. I'm not saying you don't look at it, but franchise fees does provide another revenue source that we didn't have. So we'll just have to figure out the trade-off of adding levy versus using franchise fees. I think we have such large needs that we probably both is the answer in the end, to try to look at it. But so that's something we'll continue to bring forward here as we go into future budget cycles.
And final comment, I enjoyed reading the budget. I learned that canines are a capital expense.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. And on that subject of capital expenses in the public safety side of things, actually, if you could maybe scroll ahead to the police vehicle and equipment replacement fund.
Yeah.
This was one that caught my attention because even with the additional funding from the potentially from the franchise fees, we're setting aside not enough each year, and the costs each year are fairly consistent and higher. And so even with that solution, we're still probably something in the neighborhood of $200,000 annually short, which is why the graph goes negative so soon, even with the improved situation. So I really do think if we don't address it in this budget cycle, my preference might be to do that. But certainly in the next budget cycle, I would like us to really look at how we get that particular fund, since it seems to be very much an in and out. Almost every year we have essentially the same expenditure. We should pretty much have the same amount of dollars going towards it every year. Otherwise, it's not really a fund. It's a wish.
Yeah.
So I think we need to address that.
The only thing I would say, and this is true for all the funds, is we don't inflate anything. You go further out,
Right.
the costs are going to increase. I think the costs for police vehicles have doubled over the last 5 years.
Sure.
Hopefully, it doesn't continue to double every 5 years. I can't imagine it will. But so even if we make it look good by putting 200,000, which would make it positive for 20 years, we have to understand in the out years.
But I guess it's my point is it's a little easier to make small adjustments to
Yep.
200,000 every year than it is to go from 0 to 200,000 more. Once you get it sort of right sized based on non-inflationary, then you can deal with the inflation a little easier. So, which is where we thought we were 15 years ago, and it turns out that we need to keep looking at this, obviously, and that's why we do the 20-year lookout.
this was the one that caught my eye too
Yeah.
in the graphs that you were showing, and I thought we need to address that one.
Yeah, my comment was, well, couldn't we take, if we were to use the franchise fee approach, couldn't we take some more of that, or the allocation of the savings from the franchise fee in the capital side, couldn't we spend more of that on police and vehicle and equipment? But obviously, you gotta try to satisfy a lot of different
it's
needs.
push and pull.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, Councilmember Schroeder.
Yeah, and talking about that, and I think that gets back to then having that combination then with the debt, because it's typically when you buy a house or something big, you usually take on a mortgage, right? And so if you have another area where you can take on some debt to pay, then that could free up maybe something you could put into this fund then. And so if we had the right combination of debt plus revenue, with some of this, that I think that could help it. And as the Finance Commission did come forward, they said, we have quite a bit of capacity for debt, and it's not that we obviously want to fill that up, but if we are underutilizing that's not good either. So if we could somehow use that then, and then free something else up for this, I think that could be a combination too.
Right, yeah, and the challenge we always have is that debt still has to be paid off
Right,
annually.
right, but
through
yes.
levy funds, and so
There's a
it's not,
cost.
right, it's not like borrowing money.
No,
Doesn't cost
but there's
Yeah.
that right
You have to run out the
combination.
numbers, right,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
for
the
sure.
cash flow is what it is.
Right,
Yes.
all right. Other questions from the council? Right, well, I thank you again for presenting this evening. I'm going to forego the public comment on the budget and tax levy since we just received the information this evening, and there will be opportunities for public comment as we get to our decision-making in December as well as later in the year. And I know there may be some folks here who wish to talk about franchise fees, which is our next item on the agenda. So if it's okay, unless there's objection, we'll move right to that item on the agenda. Mr. Trudgeon.
All right, I'll just stay down here. I don't have all my notes in front of me, but I will do the best I can. So, as mentioned, as part of the budget scenarios, franchise fees is a possibility for us to consider to bring additional revenue in to help pay in the proposal for capital funds. Franchise fees are allowed under state law. First, we should dial back is that typically cities and the utility companies have what's called a franchise agreement, which is usually passed in ordinance form. The city of Roseville did have franchise ordinances in place. As far back as I went to is 1998. They passed a 20-year franchise ordinance that expired in 2018. So we're actually without one, and best practices that we should have one. So regardless of whether we charge franchise fees or not, we should have a franchise ordinance. It really lays out the roles and responsibilities of the utilities when they're working in the right-of-way. I would mention, too, that utilities do pay permit fees when they actually do actual work in our right-of-way on a specific project. So that's something that's always been charged, but the franchise ordinance kind of lays out kind of the roles and responsibilities between the city and utility. So it's a good practice. Typically, within those franchise ordinance, and believe me, I think there's been a lot of conversation over decades of franchise agreements about the language. And I know the league and our attorney has some really good staff that have worked through kind of the standard franchise ordinance. And so what we have in your packet tonight is the initial draft of that franchise ordinance, which is very similar to what we had in the past. And if you look at any other city, it's the same. But anyway, within that franchise ordinance is the ability for the city to charge a franchise fees. The ordinance itself.
If you can pause it for a moment. There's somebody in the audience that appears to have a phone or something that has reminders going off. If we can try to silence those. Sorry about that. Thank you.
So most franchise ordinances, and you'll see it, I believe, in the drafts we have tonight, that do allow for cities to charge a franchise fees. Passage of the franchise ordinance does not automatically, it doesn't at all impose a franchise fee. There has to be a separate ordinance that is adopted and considered by the city council. It is technically a negotiation between the utilities and the city, even though we have the ability to do that. So we do try to, we would want to work closely with, in our case, Excel for any franchise fees, as well as the franchise ordinance. They do have a draft of the franchise ordinance, and we've talked about the franchise fees with them. As you can see, some of the data I brought forward came from them. They don't necessarily oppose franchise fees, but they certainly have some caveats on how some of it is structured and what that means for them as far as permit fees. So we would have to have continued conversations, negotiations with them before we bring back something for you to consider if that's the direction you want to go. Just want to mention two quick things just regards to the franchise fees. One is I did do some research about who has franchise fees here in Ramsey County. And I was surprised because I wasn't aware of this until I started asking. Almost all the other cities that I could find have at least one franchise fee, if not both of them. Gem Lake, Lauderdale, and White Bear Township, I was not able to get in touch with the right people to determine whether or not they had franchise fees, but every other city in Ramsey County do have franchise fees in place. Just a point of information, just wanted to share. The other thing that's in the packet is we've had Ellers provide some additional information about franchise fees, and this is not an exhaustive list, but you can see what the franchise fees around Minnesota are, and you see all the cities that are listed with franchise fees, including some in Ramsey County. The median franchise fee is $4 per residential. If you remember, we talked about $3 to $4 range. They also have information about the gas and the Region CenterPoint Energy, which doesn't serve us. We have Xcel Energy on the different rates there, and that's about $4 as well, the gas. So that's just information to consider. I'm only bringing this forward tonight because the council hasn't had a discussion about it, and since it's part of my budget strategy, I just wanted to bring it up for initial discussion. Not looking for any action tonight at all. If there is interest in the council to pursue this, I would propose bringing back the franchise ordinances. Those are the documents that are in your packet to the September 22nd meeting, and look to pass that. Then from there, if there is interest to actually pursue the franchise fee ordinance, get that in place, because if we're going along with the budget, if that's the direction we all want to go, then we need to get that implemented because there's a time lag before that takes effect. So that's just kind of the outline, and it's more of a discussion and conversation at this point, but I wanted to bring what information I had in front of you so you can discuss, and be happy to answer any questions. If I don't know the answers, we can find that out for next time we talk about it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. And so I would note that it sounds like the ordinance, the draft ordinances that are in the packet don't necessarily impose the franchise fees. They just put in place a franchise agreement between the city and the utility, which the city has had before. And under that prior franchise agreement, ordinance did not charge franchise fees. So we wouldn't essentially be different conceptually from what we had before.
Correct. Yeah, and it gives you the ability to do it if the city council decides to do it, but that would be a separate conversation and separate decision.
And would that then be an amendment to the ordinance at that point?
It'll be separate.
Or it
It'll
would
be
a separate
separate
action?
ordinance,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, thank you for clarifying that. Are there questions from the council for staff on the information presented related to franchise fees this evening? I did have one question on the larger commercial and industrial. I note that in the information from Excel, they were talking about fees for residential and for smaller commercial industrial. It seemed relatively in line with what was in the averages, or you know, in that range for the Ellers study that was in the packet. But it did seem that the large commercial industrial franchise fees did seem, on the electrics, seemed a little higher than what the average at least was in the Ellers information. That was averaging, what, about a 111, 112, somewhere there, 111.50, whereas the proposal, at least at the $2 million level under the city's information from Excel, was about 329 for the large commercial and industrial. Now, obviously, as you can see, it goes up to 525 somewhere, but
Yeah.
on average, it was about 111. It was just interesting that our theoretical numbers for what was looked at by Excel for residential and for smaller commercial and industrial seemed in line with the averages here, but the larger commercial and industrial just was a fair amount higher. So I just wanted to know if that was part of the discussions with Excel, or if, do we have the opportunity, I'm presuming, if we want to set a franchise fee to make it what we feel is appropriate as a city.
The last part, yes, we can do it, subject to having the back and forth. I really can't tell you why that number from Excel is where it is. That's just what they gave us. Not sure the rhyme or reason. I think just initial conversations with Ellers, there would be some additional assistance we could get from them to find the right number that might work or make the most sense versus or compared to other cities in doing that. But no, that's just what they gave us. So I really don't know more beyond that.
Okay.
And we didn't talk about that. We talked more about
Okay.
the residential rate.
I'd be curious to know more about where that came from, just to know if that's something that, I don't know if Excel says, well, that's what the average is in Ramsey County, or some other basis. Just understanding what that is would be
Sure.
helpful for the discussion from my point of view. Councilmember Strawn?
Thank you. When I look at this, the rates provided are 2025 for Excel and 2024 for CenterPoint. Do we know anything about the historical? If that's something that's been gradually increasing, would it be helpful to pull a 22 from each of these to see if this has been a lever that other people have been pulling, or if there's any indication from other city managers or other folks at League of Minnesota Cities that this is an area that other cities are looking to increase? Because, if everyone is hoping to go up a couple dollars, then our $3 would be in line, if not low, on the low end. But when you see some of these cities have 80 cents
Yeah.
on a residential, you wonder, if is that just something they put in place in 1992 and have forgotten about since? So.
Probably, in some respects, sometimes yes.
Okay.
My understanding is in a lot of cities, they've been in place for quite a long time. So there's probably some opportunity for them to look at that again, to look to either raise it now during their existing franchise ordinance, or when they look to renew that. I do know Maplewood just recently, within the last year, up their electric franchise charge, and I believe Vadnais Heights did too recently, and just talking to those city managers. I know some other cities, as I talked to other people, and we had a kind of a group conversation, that some felt, oh, maybe it's been a while since we've looked at ours. Maybe now I'm seeing what other cities are charging. So there might be some upward pressure to do more, but I think some cities do look at it occasionally. I think it's maybe a little bit more challenging in the middle of franchise ordinance. Not saying it's not impossible to increase them, but I think cities have done that in the past.
Great, thank you.
Other questions for staff? All right. We will open it up for public comment on this, and once again, no decision is expected to be made on this evening. This is something that, for the most part, I think the council is really just starting to look into. And so with that, we'll just remind folks of the rules of the road for public comment, and that is the 3-minute time limit per speaker. Address comments or questions to the council. If we can't answer, we won't be answering questions as a back and forth with the individual speaking, but we may be able to provide answers once all the comment is done. The 3-minute time limit. Begin your comments with your name and either street or address as you prefer for identification. And with that, we've got our first commenter with us, so I'll recognize you for your comments.
Hey, Roger Hess Jr. in Wagner Place, and you don't need to answer these. These are just questions I'd like to be answered before you actually decide something. So, number one, I was just wondering, is the city getting to its limit of how much you can levy on the general levy, that you need to go through such a roundabout way to get more money out of property owners? Because it seems like it's just kind of like a convoluted way to just get more money from people. Which, if you need more money, that's fine, but I'd rather have it taken right directly from property taxes rather than going through XL, then they pay you. Anyway, so that's one question. Just wondering if you're getting toward the levy limit that you need to do something like this. And I was wondering if you guys have an estimate how much properties that don't pay property taxes, how much you'd be collecting from them annually, the total? Because if that's a huge amount of money, then I could understand it. But if it's, just a bare minimum, that shouldn't really be part of your decision that you're getting from churches and whatever else. And do city-owned properties have to pay this? Like you have high voltage towers running through Central Park and that. So XL is using right away on city properties all over the place. And I don't know if the city has to also pay these franchise fees, which if you do, that might be more than what the non-property tax paying people now would be paying for franchise fees. And I guess that's my main things. So just things that hopefully you'll answer if you ever decide to go forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and questions. Hello and welcome.
Thank you. I'll fill that out later. Mayor and council members, my name is John Kisilishin, 3083 Victoria Street. As you know, I served as mayor of the city from 2000 to 2004. And this, amazingly, is my 30th year of involvement in the state legislature as a staff member, citizen lobbyist, or paid lobbyist. During my 30 years, I've attended over 500 tax committee hearings, and I probably sat through about 24 property tax presentations by Senate and House staff during that time. So the question you've got before you is simple. Should the Roseville City Council shift millions of dollars of what should be put on a property tax to a new electric and gas utility tax? Now, answering this question requires a careful tax analysis to determine if it will benefit or harm Roseville taxpayers. Currently, you have no analysis before you. Simply the argument of other cities are doing this, so we should copy them, is not what anyone would call a tax analysis. Now, the packet that I've distributed to all of you is a packet of information that really should have been provided up front by your staff. The first pie chart shows the half of the property taxes collected by Roseville by dollar amount come from commercial industrial. The other half comes from residents. That's unusual. Most cities do not have such a strong commercial industrial tax base. The second chart, though, says if we look at property tax parcels or people that would be billed by the electric and gas utility, over 90% of the property tax parcels in this city are residential. The next thing that's in that packet are pages that cover the various property tax circuit breaker programs that thousands of Roseville taxpayers benefit from. So we're talking about programs that protect homeowners and renters who have high taxes or rent and low income. We're thinking senior citizens that are living in their homes for decades and are surviving off of Social Security and retirement income, minority group residents, moderate to low income residents. There are no circuit breaker programs for utility taxes or sales taxes. When I see a $3 million shift every year from property tax to new electric and gas utility taxes, I see every person who currently benefits from every one of the legislature's circuit breaker tax programs being negatively impacted. When I see costs shifted from our industrial commercial base, which is paying a predominant majority of taxes in this city, I'm seeing that that's at the expense of residential property taxpayers. When I hear the term flat tax and flat tax schemes, I think of flat taxes benefiting generally those with the highest incomes and the largest and most profitable businesses. And I, for one, can't understand why anybody here would be supporting that.
Right,
What
you're
I'm not
at
hearing
3
from
minutes and 20
staff,
seconds, so you're going to have to wrap up with one more thought.
okay, what I am not hearing from staff is any analysis on the impact of property tax circuit breaker programs. And I'm also not hearing anything about the fact that we do not maintain anything for Xcel Energy. That this tax does not impact Xcel Energy's profit margin. And I think any statements alluding to that are simply incorrect and should be backtracked. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else from the public who wishes to speak to this item? And I should note that if more than one person wants to speak, you can queue up at the other microphone if you're comfortable doing that, or at least be in one of the front seats in the audience ready to go.
Hi, my name is Lori Stolarczyk. I reside at 2825 Pascal Street, which is a multi-family apartment complex. All right, I'm here today to, I was listening to what was said regarding the budget, and I understand the entire premise of, getting the budget under control and making contingency plans. And what I heard was that you want to put on a franchise tax, but only on one thing, which is the utilities, and I was wondering why it wasn't thought of to be spread apart, such as taxing part of it on liquor, part of it on other things other than just one lump tax to handle that amount of funding that you need. And also, I wanted to also mention that this year they implemented a ratio utility bill system for anybody in an apartment complex within the state of Minnesota. For myself, I was paying a $20 straight service fee per month. It is now going up to over $50, and that's for water and sewage per month, which is 1.5 times what I was paying before. And that is an impact on my income. And there are a lot of other people, and the way that I understand this is that it's based on how occupancy. So if there's one person, it's $50 or more, a little bit more. But if there's 2 people, it's more than that. If there's 3 people, it's even more than that. They even include infants in that count. So if you're a small family with infants, they're counting those as a person or an occupant. So it will make an impact for this year. And this is something that is newly implemented. It's called RUB. And I thought I'd let you guys know about it. Thank you very much.
And before you go, I just have one quick question for you. You mentioned, I think in regard to that last comment about the change, that was for water and sewer costs?
Yep,
Okay.
water and sewer.
I wanted to clarify that it was not related to the electric or gas.
No,
but
it
that
was not.
particular
That
thing
was water and
okay.
sewer.
I just wanted to
But
clarify
I just wanted to make the point that people are now having these increases that I wasn't sure if you were aware of.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks for that clarification. All right. Others that wish to speak to this item this evening?
Hello,
Hello.
Council. My name is Carl Crump, and I live on Roselawn here in Roseville. You're trying to be sneaky by getting this called a franchise fee, is what you're doing. You're trying to tax us more, and you're being sneaky about it. People would appreciate a little bit of honesty. Just because others use a franchise fee doesn't make it right. You're spending a lot of money. When I watched this presentation here, I didn't see anything that was related to how can we cut costs. It was how can we sneak something past the public. We'll call it a franchise fee, and if we call it a franchise fee and nobody can understand their utility bill anyway, I'll bet none of you can either. So we'll call it a franchise fee, and that leaves more room in levies for the future. So it seems like you're being sneaky. I think people would appreciate some honesty. I also didn't understand some other stuff too, but that's related more to the budget than I don't think you're taking budget questions right now, but I didn't understand something like, I have no problem with fire department and police department, but 15 more people and 7 more people? Again, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Good, thank you for your comments this evening. And I certainly would encourage folks, if you have questions about some of those staffing needs in relation to public safety, that we do have a fair amount of information, either from prior meeting discussions of the council on those topics, or certainly connecting with police and fire departments to get more information. I think they'd be happy to provide some additional information in regard to that. So hopefully that gets to that piece of information for you. Other comments or questions from members of the audience on the proposed consideration of franchise utility fees or utility franchise fees? It does not appear to be the case. Then we'll go ahead and close the public comment. I think there were a couple of questions raised that I might be able to answer, although some of them were definitely going to require more information, either from staff or other research, and then certainly more discussion from the council. At this time, the legislature has not imposed any limits on city levy increases. That's often what can happen. And it's been years since the last time it happened, but the legislature can, because basically cities are created by a legislative act, the legislature can decide to control city actions through, for instance, putting a % limit on the increase to the tax levy. We don't have anything like that in place right now, and hopefully we can continue without that. I did ask Mr. Trudgeon for a little more information, and I don't have this in a fancy visual, so I'm going to attempt to just do it verbally, and hopefully the record can, you can watch the video later if you want the numbers. So for residential customers, and just quickly, to confirm, Mr. Trudgeon, in our conversation back and forth, I believe the information from Excel was that apartment dwellers count as the residential.
That's correct.
So they would be in the $3 or $3.50 or $4 amount for apartment residents. So I think that's in these residential numbers then. So residential payers count for about 88% of the affected accounts. That includes both about 16,000 electric accounts and 11,000 gas accounts. Now, certainly there's going to be some overlap between those, but if you consider an electric account separate from a gas account, the total number of accounts works out to about 88% of the accounts that would be paying these fees potentially if they're imposed. And under the $2.1 million proposal from Excel, that those 88% of accounts would pay about 46% of the total amount, which seems comparable to some of the data as to the number of payers on the property tax versus the contribution. Then on the small commercial and industrial, let's see, that works out to about, between the two categories, it works out to about 11% of the accounts and about 17% of the dollars collected. And then finally, on the large commercial and industrial, those work out to just over 0.5% of the accounts, and they would provide about 37% of the revenue under the franchise fee and the $2.1 million information we had from Excel. So that provides some information. We can certainly follow up with that as part of packets in future discussions as this goes forward. Let's see. Why not tax other things? The city, once again, is controlled by what the legislature wants cities to do, and cities are not able to collect taxes on alcohol, for instance. We are not able to collect income taxes on individual incomes. There's a number of things that cities are not able to collect taxes on. The primary source is, as was noted in Mr. Trudgeon's budget presentation, about 40% of our budget is paid by property taxes. A significant additional portion is paid by the utility fees for water, sewer, and stormwater, and recycling, those types of things. So that's why we're limited as to what we might be able to do. And then I think that gets to the questions that were brought forward, other than perhaps ones that we need to have as part of our conversations at the council. The other thing I just did want to note too is that the reason for this authority, or the reason cities have this ability, is also under state law. The things that we can do franchise fees associated with as cities are cable television services and utilities like this, and there may be others that are using the public rights of way to run their wires or pipes or whatever it might be. And the theory being is that is a public property, a public good that is being used for non-public purposes, and there ought to be a compensation to the public, which is the taxpayers, for the use of that public property for that purpose. And so that's the theory behind franchise fees. Now, I'm not going to get into whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. I'll just let you know that that's, for members of the public, that is the basis for franchise fees. And certainly it is something that is controlled by the legislature as to whether they are charged or not, just in general. So I think that gets to the information that I think was brought up in the comments. Maybe just a quick check-in with the council on any further discussion or particular information we might like to have from the city manager or staff before our next discussion. I know, Mr. Trudgeon, you talked about bringing the ordinances back on the 22nd of September, which would be the time frame for also adopting our not-to-exceed levy.
Right. Correct.
So that might be good timing.
And once again, it's the franchise ordinances, not the franchise
fees.
fee.
Right. So there would be two separate actions. Councilmember Strawn.
Is there a duration of the franchise ordinance? Because you mentioned some had expired, so what kind of term
It's
would we have?
20 years is typical term.
Okay, thank you.
Ooh, and that was one thing I was going to clarify. So you had mentioned that there may be a challenge to change the fees in the middle of the franchise term if fees are imposed at the beginning of the term. I was wondering if those are if they're set for the whole 20-year period, or do people build in escalators over the course of the franchise agreement, or how does that work?
We think we can build inflators in, or escalators, however you want to call it, throughout it. It's probably better to do it up front so everybody's aware of it versus in the middle of it. But I don't think anything stops you from reopening it in the middle of the franchise. But once again, you have to sit down with the utility company to sort out what they'd be willing to accept.
Right. So we've got a number of questions, I think, that have come up through this initial discussion that hopefully we can have some more information on for that next discussion. And certainly there'll be an opportunity for members of the public to continue to weigh in through this process as well. With that, I believe that concludes this item. And then we'll move on to switching gears fairly substantially here to consideration. I believe this may be our first council actions as it relates to a cannabis business, a specific cannabis business in the city of Roseville. And we have this is a conditional use consideration, which is a land use type approval related to a proposed business in the city of Roseville. And I'm going to leave my introduction at that and turn it over to a much more expert person on this topic, our city planner, Thomas Paschke, to bring this item before the council. Mr. Paschke.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council.
Actually, Mr. Paschke, I forgot, as a courtesy to the council, do we want to take our 8 o'clock break at this time before we get into another item?
Possibly. We can.
Council, do we want to take about a 5-minute break? Why don't we go ahead and do that? Sorry, Mr. Paschke, I just realized as I looked at the clock behind you.
It's fine.
So we'll take about a 5-minute break. we're back from, we actually were fairly on time with that break. I'm impressed with everyone. About a 5-minute break here, and we're continuing with our agenda with, once again, item 7E, which is to consider a resolution approving cannabis combination business as a conditional use at 2218 County Road D, Suite 200. See, I was much better with my introduction this time, and I'm turning it over to City Planner Thomas Paschke to bring this item before the council.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. As indicated, this is a request for conditional use at 2218 County Road D. And just for those in the audience and watching on television, it's going to be this portion of the building that's located in the northwest corner of the property. Per our ordinance, a cannabis combination business, or as the state refers to them, a meso or a micro business, are required to have a conditional use in the MU3 or the corridor mixed use zoning district. And so that's the purpose of why we're here, and one of the main reasons is because of the different elections that they can take as it relates to their registration with the city, as well as their license through the state, allows them to do multiple things on their site. But in this case, it's on-site consumption and retail sales. And so under our ordinance, actually, both of those are permitted uses, but because of the way that our ordinance is set up, it requires the conditional use to go through that process. Staff analyzed this as a part of that process, brought that analysis of the 5 conditional use criteria to the Planning Commission on August 6th. Planning Commission voted 6-1 to support the conditional use approval for this property, and that is what our recommendation would be this evening. And so with that, you have an ordinance that is a part of your packet. I believe it has 3 conditions on it, and our recommendation is to support or to adopt that resolution for the approval of the conditional use. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Paschke. And that was the first thing I was going to clarify, resolution versus ordinance. It is a resolution for
Yes.
conditional use, all right. And once again, further clarification, so if this project or this proposal, this business came forward as just a retail business and maybe also had the consumption but wasn't licensed under the state system as a micro business, we wouldn't need to do the conditional use, is that?
That is
my understanding?
correct.
Okay,
That is
so it is
correct.
really because of that category as a micro business.
Correct, because they can select a number of different options that they can do. And so under the state statute as well as under our ordinance, we require that to be a conditional use. But separately, they would be permitted.
So as we consider a conditional use, are we trying to anticipate any of those other ones, even if they're not necessarily being proposed as part of our consideration of the conditional use, because the conditional use runs with the property on the basis as a micro business, or talk about how that was looked at or is thought of from a planning and or the planning commission perspective?
2 things. I believe if their state license only has them checking those 2 boxes, the only way they can do other things is to go back and modify their state license, which then would require them to come through the city and, I believe, modify their registration that they have with us, which is also trigger them to update or modify their conditional use. So
Because
there
it's
are
a change
checks
to the
and
use.
balances in place for making changes or adding onto your license to do something different. I'm not sure how it all works through the state process, but that's what our requirement would be through the registration and the land use portion.
So an example or comparison might be we have conditional use approval for a drive-through on a particular site, and the business decides to change their plan of how they're going to run their drive-through and route their traffic and things like that. That might be different from what the conditional use was originally approved for. They would have to come back to the city for a new conditional use approval.
That is
for
correct.
that type of change. Similar
Or
to-
revised, but yes.
Revised, right, okay.
Exactly.
Right, thank you for helping clarify that. And with that, I'll defer to the council members for additional questions. Councilmember Strawn.
Thank you. So is the conditional use tied to the business or tied to the property?
Well, it's recorded against the property, so it's on there. In this case, it's tied to this business because it only allows this business or that use within that facility to be able to do the 2 things that they're seeking this evening, which is retail sales and eventually on-site consumption at some point in time in the future.
So if it were to change ownership, would any of that conditional use been granted to that, or that anyone new would have to start over, or would that be implied?
My understanding would be that if a new owner took over, they would only be allowed to do those two things. Now, I don't know how it works with our registration and whether or not it starts it all over and we'd have to go through the process again, but typically, if a conditional use is in place, as long as you don't do anything outside of what was approved, then you're allowed to continue that particular use with those conditions in place.
And this is probably a question for the attorney. Is there anything that we could or should do to make sure that maybe we knew if there was a change in ownership, to make sure we could vet out that new ownership as well, like we do? I mean, I don't know that we have the same potential as we do maybe in a massage therapy business where we run a background check and things like that.
Ms. Tierney.
Councilmember Strawn, as maybe you recall when we were adopting the cannabis-related ordinances, state law restricts significantly what kind of authority cities have approving particular operators. And so what would happen in this situation if this operator left, the zoning permission would continue, but they would still need to go through the state, who would vet their license. And then it would come to the city for approval of a registration. But if you recall, the basis to deny a registration is very, very limited. So the vetting would really happen at the state level.
All right, thank you.
Other questions for staff? All right. It doesn't appear there are any. It looks like we may have a representative of the applicant with us this evening. Is there anything you'd like to present to the council in support of your case this evening, or do you just want to stand for questions?
Yeah, I'd love to talk if that's all right.
That'd be fine. If you can introduce yourself and
Absolutely.
address the council.
My name's Jacob Affelt. This is my wife, Abigail Affelt, and we are the two owners of Frostbite Cannabis. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about our kind of backgrounds before going into this to kind of ease a little bit. We do have to go through background checks at the state level to make sure we don't have any crimes or anything like that that would be disqualifying for this. Also, if we choose to do any of those other things that Thomas had mentioned about like cultivation or production, it would go through the entire process again, and they would contact local government to make sure that we met all of the zoning and everything like that. But my background is I work for a utility company here locally, and I work with them across 8 states, 88 unions on nuclear power, on electric power, and on gas power. And I do all their technical training for them on those things. I'm very, very familiar with working in highly regulated spaces. In fact, the spaces I work in today are probably more regulated than cannabis. So, and my wife is a director of product information and e-commerce for a large manufacturer here in Minneapolis, and is very, very familiar with how to handle customers, how to handle their journey, and make sure they have a positive experience. So we just want to make sure that we are positive for the community as a whole, and here to really kind of be stewards of the community as well. So, and happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thank you. Are there questions for the applicant from the council? All right. Thank you for being here this evening.
Absolutely.
All right. Next in the process would be if there's anybody from the public who wishes to speak either in support of or opposition to the proposed conditional use approval for this site and this use as outlined. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this item this evening?
Okay.
Does not appear to be the case, and once again, we did have the public hearing at the Planning Commission where there was an opportunity for the public to speak as well, but we always do have one more chance at the council as well. With that, then, the ask for the council is once again to consider adopting the resolution in the packet which would approve the cannabis combination business as a conditional use at that location, as outlined with the conditions as noted in the resolution. The alternate action certainly would be to not adopt the resolution, essentially denying the conditional use. The city council would have to put forth findings to that as to why not to adopt that resolution or approve that use as a conditional use in that case. Council?
I would
Councilmember
move to adopt the resolution.
I'd second it.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder. Discussion on the motion. Once again, this is a motion to adopt the resolution approving the conditional use as outlined with the conditions in the resolution. Councilmember Groff, as the maker of the motion.
Reading through the materials and with your comments, I think it would be a well-run business in Roseville. We welcome you to the business community, in my opinion. And I think it'll fill in a service that some people are looking for. Thank you.
And Councilmember Schroeder as the seconder of the motion.
And thank you for coming forward and giving us some history. I think that's it's always good to know that there's some strong people that are going to be running the business. You know, considering it's a new industry for here, so you need to have people that are really going to, you know, work on especially the regulation side of things. And Roseville does like to be friendly to businesses, so we look forward to see this one open. So thank you, and if it passes, welcome.
All right, additional discussion on the motion. Councilmember Bauer.
Following up on that, it is a new business for you, but this is also something new for us in Roseville. So we very much are interested in working with you. So please do reach out through the city if there's things that come up. It's been a long process for us to get all this in place with the zoning. Ms. Tierney can attest to that with their work on the planning commission to make that through. So definitely reach out. We're very excited to have you here and wish you the best on your new endeavor.
And Councilmember Strawn.
Thank you for sharing your information. That's helpful. I think with most people, the notion of a cash-only business is a little scary for safety. And so I trust that you will keep that in mind and make sure that the area businesses are also safe by providing adequate protection and adequate kind of make sure that I know other businesses in that strip mall that's their biggest concern, is that we aren't making it into a situation where anytime you have a cash-only business can get a little sketchy. And so I think that's the biggest concern that I hear. So I hope that you will keep that top of mind.
All right, other discussion on the motion? I would just add that I think, as was noted, this is our first consideration under our new regime here in Roseville of ordinances. And so it was helpful to go through this process and be reminded of some of the aspects of what we had considered as part of our decision-making process. And, you know, certainly that's not the reason we consider these things, is just to re-educate ourselves about what we decided before. But it is nice to see the practical application of regulations and make sure that we can see whether the scheme is working as it was intended to. So that is helpful, and hopefully we'll have a couple more chances in the future to do that as well. So with that, we've got the motion before us. All those in favor of the motion to adopt the resolution approving that conditional use signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that resolution is adopted. Wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
All right, that then, in another change of gears, we have a couple of a couple of nuisance code violation type issues to consider this evening. The first one is item 7F, which is to consider a request to perform an abatement for unresolved code violations at 1140 Roselawn Avenue in Roseville. And I'll turn it over to David England, who is our codes official, and look forward to his presentation on this item.
Thank you, Mayor Rowe and members of council. As stated, this is a request to perform an abatement for unresolved code violations. This case came to us as a complaint from a neighboring resident, and what we found on site was numerous vehicles that were inoperable due to expired licenses, as well as flat tires on vehicles. We posted a door hanger at this, requesting the property owner bring it into compliance within 10 days. After 10 days, 3 of the vehicles had current registration. One still remained with several flat tires. So we posted the property at that time for this meeting here tonight, so it could be discussed for an abatement. At the writing of the RCA, I had no contact from the property owner, but as of Wednesday last week, I did receive an email from the property owner who stated he would have the property into compliance by today. I did receive an additional email from the property owner today saying he was not able to source tires for his vehicle until today, but he felt he would have everything corrected by Friday of this week. So it was at that point where I decided to leave this on for tonight's consideration and request council approve the abatement. However, if council should choose to do that, they could stay the enforcement. But since we were already posted, we were already set for this meeting tonight, I wanted to keep it moving forward. This is a property that's had concerns in the past, leading to also we did issue a repeat nuisance fine to this property owner because of these latest items. So should council wish to approve the abatement, we could either go forward with it as soon as possible, or we could stay enforcement if you would wish.
Great, thank you, Mr. England. Are there questions from the council? Councilmember Strong.
Can you speak to the repeat, when those were, or what that, was this the same type of issue that we are talking about here?
These are, we had the exact same issues last year with the vehicles. We had 2 cases last year, which brought him to a repeat nuisance warning letter that was issued last year. And then we had also 2 more in the spring of this year. And so now at this point, when we received this complaint, we decided to issue the repeat nuisance in hopes of spurring the property owner into voluntary compliance. We believe he actually did receive the repeat nuisance the same day that he contacted me by email.
Other questions for staff? Is the property owner or representative here this evening? Does not appear to be the case. With that, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this request to perform an abatement of the violations on this property? Does not appear to be the case. We'll close the opportunity for public comment then and move to council consideration. I guess the first question is, does the council wish to look at staying the enforcement perhaps for a week or until the end of the day, Friday, or something along those lines based on the information from the property owner? Thoughts from the council?
I believe we've given enough time for this. I mean, looking at the timeline, this was first noted June 4th. It is currently August 25th. That's probably adequate time. Also, the nature that this is a repeat. This isn't something that's new to the homeowner, so I'd be comfortable with proceeding at the earliest convenience to have the city rectify this.
Other thoughts from council members?
I would agree.
Do we have a motion with respect to this particular code violation?
So move to make a motion to direct community development staff to abate this property.
I'd second it.
Nuisance.
Right, that's been moved by Councilmember Bauer, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder, to direct staff to abate the nuisance as outlined, noting no stay of the enforcement as part of the motion. Discussion on the motion as the maker, Councilmember Bauer.
No, I appreciate the timeline and giving the property owner enough time to resolve this.
As the seconder, Councilmember Schroeder.
Yeah, as they say, this wasn't his first rodeo, so I think he understands the how this works, and so I would agree with that.
All right, other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimous. That abatement is authorized. The second abatement case we have this evening is to consider a request to perform, perform abatement of unresolved violations at 325 Capitol View West. Once again, Mr. England is here to present this item for us this evening.
This one has taken us quite a while. This started as a result of the neighborhood enhancement program through the proactive inspections. Our staff member did post a door hanger at that time on June 4th to notify the property owner of vehicles in the long grass on site that were a problem. We did go back through NEP on the 17th and the 27th of June, which is common for NEP. We try to give us an additional amount of time to bring these properties into compliance. It was transferred over to regular code enforcement on July 7th, and then we basically start the process over where we notify the property owner of the violations on site. We did that numerous times up until August 5th, when we decided that we would bring this before council again tonight on the 25th. Through the entire process, through the numerous notices and postings that we placed on this site, we we have not received any contact from the property owner. We did conduct an accelerated abatement for the grass. That was substantial. And again, we received no contact from the property owner at all, which is unusual. Generally, these are, once we put the council notice on there, we generally receive comment. We did also try contacting the property owner by phone and by text, because we have had contact with this property last year, and they were able to bring it into compliance then. But again, we have not had anything at this point. And just for reference, this vehicle here is not registered to the property itself, and it does not display license plates in the front. The rear has a license plate, but is expired, I believe, 6 years. This vehicle is inoperable because it has expired tabs, but it appears otherwise operable. Same with this vehicle here, expired tabs, but it has not moved. This is posting day, August 5th. This is last week. So there's movement at the property. There's people there. They're just not contacting us, and I haven't figured out a way yet to get contact from them to see what their plan is for this. But the request tonight is to abate all of the nuisance codes violations that exist, would be to remove all 3 vehicles that are unlicensed and inoperable, and remove the storage of the items that are in the driveway here, this pile of items there. And that's what we would ask council's approval for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Englund. Are there questions from the council on this particular requested abatement this evening? All right, is there the property owner or representative of the property owner here this evening? Does not appear to be the case. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this item this evening? Also does not appear to be the case. Given that, we'll move to council consideration. We've got the request before us to perform the abatement of the code violations at this property at 325 Capitol View Avenue West. Is there a motion from the council?
I would make the motion to abate this property, direct staff to abate it.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Strawn to authorize the abatement of this property. Discussion on the motion. Maker of the motion, Councilmember Groff.
Mostly, I'd like to thank Mr. Englund and the department for their persistence and their thoroughness in notifying people, and you even called them trying to make contact. And with that in mind, I think it's the only way forward is to conduct these abatements so that the very few residents of Roseville that do this understand that this is going to have to be taken care of. And there are costs and penalties involved in that. So thank you for your work.
All right, and as the seconder, Councilmember Strawn.
I agree. My neighbors, that's, I think the most frequent reason my neighbors reach out to me is because of grass or concerns of other homes. And so I think you really did a lot of work to get to this point. So I thank you for that. And hopefully we can get some, maybe they'll call you if their cars are gone. I don't know. But we want them to be in compliance, and we want them to be responsive. And hopefully this will be the last time we have to deal with this property for a while.
Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that abatement is authorized. Thank you, Mr. Englund, and for all of your staff efforts.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us then, we did not have, the third abatement item was resolved, as was mentioned by Mr. Trudgeon earlier in the meeting. That brings us then to a stormwater update, and we have Ryan Johnson with us this evening from our Public Works Department to bring forward this update. Mr. Johnson, welcome.
All right, Mayor, council members, thanks for the opportunity. I always appreciate being able to come up here and talk about the fine work we do. And 2025 stormwater update. This is going to be the pond edition. We did have a presentation like this that we talked about basically all of our drainage issues, stormwater infrastructure in 2024, which we'll kind of cover next here. And like usual, I have a lot of slides in here. I promise I won't go through detail on every single one of them. A lot of them will just be reference. You can look back at it, things like that. But in January 22nd, 2024, we did talk about, again, kind of the drainage issues, how we handled them, how we prioritize projects. That's one thing that we've always worked really hard on, is just trying to get a handle on all the different moving pieces we have downstairs with how we handle all of our utilities, how we manage them, especially on the storm sewer side. What do we do with a lot of the, just kind of the nuisance issues we have? What do we have with like the major, more critical issues with our storm sewer infrastructure? And council agreed that, trying to get a bunch of these with our pavement management project is a really good way to kind of help spread the dollars. Work towards trying to get a lot of the drainage issues kind of solved as we work through that. If we have time and money, and have a really good opportunity, doing a standalone project to make faster improvements on some of our issues, is great. But yeah, it's like we always monitor these, every rainfall, at least a couple times a year. It's like we are out and about looking at all this just to try to stay ahead of it, because, it's like infrastructure that's 60 years old, things change quick, especially when we have wet years. So yeah, we just try to stay ahead of it. This is a similar table and just some text from our last discussion on it. The only addition has been we added the 2026 numbers that we worked with Ms. Petrak with, the finance director, and our budget's been relatively right around that 3 million mark. And then kind of the big note for the 2026 is just we are up to about 1.8 million for capital improvement when it comes to like our stormwater infrastructure. And a lot of that will be actually a project too that we'll talk about a little bit later with Willow Pond, just with, kind of the size and scope of what we really put into, just these stormwater ponds and how we have to maintain them. But then just the other note with that $1.8 million CIP money for that, we usually budget about $585,000 for just pond maintenance. Again, as we kind of talk about Willow's kind of the exception because it's a, it's a 11 acre wetland. It's got a lot of water going to it, and how we kind of manage that to function, and then also, help, maintain just it's a natural resource. So we've been pumping stormwater to it for years. I guess not pumping, but draining to it for years. So there's a lot of things into it. And then the remaining 1.2 million, that's where we put all of our catch basins, manholes, storm sewer pipes, our underground BMPs if we add additions like with our pavement management projects to help reduce some of the drainage issues. So that is the first couple. But again, it's like this is what we kind of prioritize and look through every year, 126 miles of pipe. And then the same thing, we also have 400 publicly owned BMPs, so that's ponds, rain gardens, underground structures. And then we also try to keep an eye on the 300 privately owned ones. Again, a lot of these go in because of whether it's watershed district regulations, our stormwater requirements. Again, it's like we're asking these properties to put them in. We try to get out there every few years, if not every year, take a look at them, make sure that they're functioning, because again, it's like Roseville just has some drainage issues, and we like to stay on top of them. And again, if we're asking somebody to put them in, we'd like for them to function, and then we also like to make sure our own BMPs are functioning too. Try to lead by example. And all of this is within our roughly 14 square mile area here, so there's always a lot of things going on. Our 5-year roadway CIP really drives a lot of the stormwater projects, and that takes ponds into consideration too. So as we're looking through all the streets that are coming up and just trying to identify what we can do where, what year we can do it, this also helps drive our CIP projects for our stormwater, as we're also looking at the roadways. So, we try to plan ahead as much as possible. A lot of the prep work with, televising storm sewers, doing inspections. Usually we know where a lot of the flooding and the drainage issues already are. But again, new ones always pop up as kind of the infrastructure changes as time goes on. We never know when we're going to have a random failure. We get random sinkholes. We had a couple this year right off of Dale Street, and then one on Victoria and B. So one of them was kind of a nuisance in the past, but one of them was new. So they come up. So with all the prep work, as it relates to ponds, it's like we're looking at inlets, outlets. We're looking at the bathymetric data, so the contours of the pond bottom. we don't have a lot of the information of like when these were installed, what they looked like. So anything we're getting now for the bathymetric data is really new and it's helpful. That for a lot of them, it ends actually being more like our front end data. Now we can actually use that as kind of our reference point, unless we notice something is just rather bad on it. So yeah, we try to get as much data as we can on the front end just based on the PMP map here, just so we can be ahead of it. And at the same time, we also have regulations that we have to follow. This is the total maximum daily load areas for our storm sewer permit with the Pollution Control Agency. So within these areas, we're required to pull out a certain amount of phosphorus, for example, for a lot of these. So we're trying to work through all those, along with also, maintaining all of our infrastructure. This is our Fairview and Sea Pond. This kind of just goes over, again, the prioritization schedule of like what we're kind of looking at, and then what we're looking at for like the scoping. A lot of these ponds, again, were installed. We don't have a lot of data for them. So what we try to do is we try to cram in everything all into one process. We want to look at all the inlets, all the outlets, what's the pond bottom at. We want to know what the high water level is. This one is kind of a unique example with the blue line around the pond is the what we call the 100-year high water level mark. And as you notice, it goes right through a property and it runs down the street. And, this is one of the worst ones, thankfully. But it's like when we're going in there to look at all of our infrastructure, we want to know what it is and if we can improve it. And we also want to make sure we don't make it worse with any of the infrastructure that we kind of modify with it. So again, with this one, it's just a really good example because it ends up coming up in a couple pictures from now. But again, it's like we're looking at all this data. We want these things to work. We want to make sure that private property and public property is safe. So yeah, we tend to put in anything from 24 months or even 12 months is pretty fast turnaround. But again, it's like we try to get these built in as fast as we can that kind of fit into just the overall budget.
And on this slide, I'm old enough to remember that the city bought the property just south of the pond, used to have a house on it.
It sure did.
And we bought that as part of our ability to try to deal with the flooding issues. So it's interesting that here we are still dealing with them, but at least there's one less house that's flooding.
Yes, no, that is true. And we you added a little bit of flood storage by getting rid of the house. So that was, but yeah. I'm even old enough, I wasn't in Roseville at the time when this was all purchased, but I remember I actually met with the property owner before they sold. And it might have actually been after that 2011 rain event where they were trying to look at other options on what they could do. So we've come full circle. But no, it was, it was an interesting just situation, that is for sure. All right, so, and again, it's like the reason we do so much of this background work is we're trying to find out, we're trying to lessen the nuisance issues, we're trying to lessen the street flooding, all these things that happen. And then, yes, it's like the top right picture on the screen now is the now vacant lot where, the house was sitting where, it's like now it is an extension of the pond. So basically the pond rises up, goes all the way through the yard, all the way down the streets. And again, it's like these are the more drastic photos from the 2011 flood that happened that year. And then as we're looking at like a current project, we've had several discussions with the property owners around Willow Pond. They're very organized and they love Willow. That's about what it comes down to. So we've been working with them for years just on whether it's, the algae, the water quality, just high water levels, things like that. So it's like we, take these concerns very seriously. We want to try to make it, as nice as possible.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Seriously didn't get that. So, which is fantastic. It's all I have to remember that. She doesn't understand stormwater.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Technology's great.
If you just want to throw it out there.
I was actually thinking about that. Anyway, so it's, yes, we want to improve these as much as possible. And it's like the aerials, are just historic. just from the 40s, 50s, and then, you know, it's like what we know as Willow Pond today. So there's, again, it's like, this just captures a lot of stormwater. Yes, Councilmember?
Where's Gottfried Pit?
Godfrey's
We're getting to that,
Pit.
I think.
Okay.
It's way southwest of this.
Larpenteur Avenue.
Yep, Larpenter and Fernwood. Cub Foods,
Okay.
that's down there. It's down in that area.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so yeah, so Willow Pond again. This is kind of what we know it as today, and again, it's a massive drainage area, 300, almost 400 acres, and you know this is one of our bathymetric maps that we took in like 2015. Part of the reason to get this info is we knew that stormwater projects were going to be happening on Highway 36 with MnDOT, and that Roseville Area High Schools was also going to have a project with all their fields and everything like that. So went out, got this data on the front end, because unfortunately what happens is no matter how hard we try, you know, erosion control permits and everything, construction happens. We do get those rains that, you know, just kind of blow through everything. And this is two different events of, you know, sediment-laden water just going into Willow Pond. And again, this is part of the reason why the residents know me so well is I think I was on speed dial for those 5 years, roughly the projects were going on. So it's like we got a lot of calls, we got a lot of complaints, so we were trying to work through as much as possible.
So this is dirty water from the construction runoff on those projects.
Yep.
You know, high rain event, okay.
Yep. So yeah, this is going into Willow Pond, and again, it's like I think these ones were from the Highway 36 project specifically. But again, it's like, yeah, just massive areas all open, and again, when you have all that draining to one spot, it causes some problems. So, with that, with the resident complaints, you know, it's like we did do one piece of maintenance on this between 21 and 23. We're basically our outlet structure for the pond failed. Apparently, when you have iron sitting in water all the time, it rusts. So it did fail after kind of basically a massive ice sheet shifted and just kind of pushed it over. So we got that maintained. Otherwise, we would do this all with one project. But again, it's like with all of this, you know, we're looking at if we're taking out about 1 foot of material over the entire 11 acres, we're looking at about 18,000 cubic yards. So we're looking at over $1 million just for the dredge material, plus some inlets and permitting costs and everything like that. You know, this will be probably our most expensive pond to actually dredge. So yeah, we'll look at about 1.1, 1.2 overall just to dredge all of this. And again, part of the reason this was such a big issue is this is our 2024 bathymetric map that we took. Basically, again, just trying to get updated info, knowing that all this construction happened. We knew everything was going on. You know, we still had complaints from residents about just Willow Pond and how it looked. And as you'll notice, there are contours that are just completely gone. We lost about 2 feet from our deepest elevation, and our average depth went from 2.8 feet to 2.2. So that's a pretty significant decrease over 9 years from when it started to ended. And again, it's like those are where we basically lost contours. So it's like we lost feet within those areas. So what happens when we see something that's this drastic? We basically get some more information. We hired a contractor again to come out and basically get sediment cores to be able to tell us in these areas how much sediment is there over like the natural wetland bottom. And within all of them, I mean, we had one that was 1.7 feet of sediment, you know, all the way down to an area where there's 0.2. But it's like there was significant change in the past 9 to 10 years. So with that, you know, there was just a lot of material going into Willow Pond. So this one is on the short list for probably whether it's this winter, whether work happens in 25 or, you know, January, February 26. This one will be going on. And then just kind of quickly, it's just, this was our Fairview and Sea Pond again. Just, you know, this is the data hole that I go into and just kind of nerd out for a while looking at what is going to it. If we dredge it, do we keep it the same depth? Do we dredge it deeper to get more treatment out of it? You know, what are we looking at that fits basically into our budget that we can really, improve the downstream waters within this area. So, and again, our infrastructure is a little bit ratty. And then, just flared ends, inlets, outlets, tipped. The big one there on the right is basically that one clogged all the time. So we basically modified everything. We submerged, we put in an overflow outlet just to make sure if anything got clogged, water could still get out because we don't want it to go up to Rose Place again. And so, it's like now this is a much better functioning pond. And we have hopefully less concerns about it, just again, kind of with some of the redundancy and now the maintenance is done on it. And again, we always work with partners. So now our big next project is that's coming up that Rice Creek is working on is this Jones Lake project in New Brighton. Basically stemmed from a water management project that we were working with that we actually petitioned them to do to look at just ways to make, in that case, Roseville, St. Anthony, and New Brighton just drain a little bit better. So they're looking for a $10 million project in this, what they call Jones Lake. And it's amazing that if they, when this project actually goes in, this one project will basically make the west third of Roseville drain much better. Just because, unfortunately, our water can't get out of Roseville fast enough. So because it gets kind of clogged up from Jones Lake back into us. Right. So now with Jones Lake opening up, we can actually get more water to it, maybe a little bit faster. There's more storage. We don't flood Jones Lake any worse, and Roseville will actually drain a little bit better. Yes, Councilmember.
So this will kind of impact that old Highway 8, County Road 8, or 88, kind of that whole corridor that we talked about it with another project that people were concerned about when we were talking about a building project, but I know that they've had but this kind of seems like this might be the epicenter of their issues, or?
Yeah, this project will definitely help improve all of that. Some of that was local too, just with our storm sewer not being able to, take all the water. Kind of a combination of this flood storage opening up with some more local improvements on our side would, make night and day difference in that area of the city. And last slide is just, this is our basically 6 years of the short list of what's coming up. Again, it's like we're always looking ahead on what ponds are coming up. Again, we try to get them into the, lined up with our roadway PMP project slot. And we have plenty of just projects to do just on the, the pond side of things. And kind of the juggling act with this again is we usually have that $585,000 roughly for pond maintenance. So again, it's like we didn't do a lot this year for ponds because we knew Willow was going to be coming up next year. So that freed up this year's CIP money to go get allocated towards that. So kind of talking about deferring for a year to get a little bit more capital up there to spend up the next year. But then after that, a lot of it ends up being kind of some of the maintenance. There are a few on here that could be much worse than what the estimates are, just with the amount of material that's in there and what actually the material is. So based on like what we actually pull out dredge, it can be anywhere from $20, $30 a cubic yard to pull out all the way up to 80 to 100, depending on how contaminated it is. So we never know that until we start doing some of the tests. Which then again shifts all of my, nice work of my graph rounds here. So, but other than that, again, that is kind of the end of the presentation for that. If there's any other questions, more than happy to answer them. I was happy to give a stormwater update. And again, it's like the big thing with this one is, it's just wanted to make sure council was familiar and, accepting of kind of how we prioritize all these, projects, whether it's the stormwater, like with the infrastructure, or if it's a lot of the ponds and things like that. So I'm open to any feedback, questions, or anything else.
Any questions for staff? Councilmember Bauer.
How long do you think it will take to dredge Willow, roughly?
It will really depend on basically what the weather is like. If we have a cold year, we can probably get in and out in, maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks. If it's kind of if it's like the winters that we had in the past, where it's like we have a few weeks of cold, then we have a week of 20 degrees, even 30 degrees, where we start getting some of the melt and everything coming off the roads. There's really no way to stop the water coming from, basically everything draining from the north into Willow. We can't stop it. So once we get a little bit of sun and a little bit of heat, heat being 20 degrees, get some melt, that'll significantly slow down the project, because we'll have to continuously just keep pumping it, because we need that bottom to freeze to really move equipment around in it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Groff.
What do they do with the dredge if it's contaminated? What do they do with that?
Oh, if it's really contaminated, that material has to actually go to a landfill. And that's where you get like the $80 to $100 per yard, because it's trucked down to like Rosemont to like SKB or something like that. If it's like a level 1 or 2, most of the time those go to like whoever's doing the work usually has a pit. They'll bring it there and they'll basically keep working it until it gets down to a suitable level where it can get used on another project. Because even if it's a level 2, which is not the most contaminated, that can get used for construction projects. And since the material has shown that it's silty, kind of sandy material, they could actually use it for some kind of fill or to basically blend with something else to make into a construction project.
So if it's more contaminated, the landfill it has to go to is a special landfill that can deal with contaminated material. So it's not just going back into the environment.
Yep.
Right, got it. Councilmember Schroeder.
So you talked about it, especially with Willow, if the weather conditions weren't right, you wouldn't be able to do it. Would that be the exact same thing for all of them? Or would you say if you couldn't do Willow, is it possible that maybe like Acorn then would be still doable? Or once it warms up, none of them are doable?
No, it's a little bit more specific to the area that's draining to it. The ones with the smaller drainage areas, that maybe we're not working in such a, Willow is 11 acres. It's a big drainage area going to it. That's much more detrimental than if we have something like maybe Acorn or, even like we did Fulham a couple years ago, which is kind of southwest Roseville. If we would have had, a little bit more warmer days or something like that, those could still get done. Just because it's like you can kind of contain it based on like what the drainage area is. It's not it's not easier when obviously we get it, but there's a lot that are still doable.
So if you can't do Willow, then would you go ahead and do the next one, or would you just wait?
It depends on if we're ready for the next one. I try to be at least a year or so ahead, just because we do have, if something does fall through, or if we have just, something comes up where we have the additional capacity. Yeah, I like to be ready for it. So no, it's like shifting them as long as they're permanent and ready to go. It's like we can always move from one to the other. The contractor might not like it if, they bid on Willow and find out that they can't do it, but they get to do a 2-acre pond over here. But winter money for them is, kind of nice. So they like to keep busy, and if we have something else for them, they'll take it.
Other questions? All right, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this item this evening? It does not appear to be the case. Thank you for the update. I'm sure we'll be seeing more about these projects as things come forward, and look forward to the next stormwater update.
You and me both.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right, that brings us then to consideration of extensions to our civil and prosecution legal services contracts. And for that end, we have our Assistant City Manager, Rebecca Olson, with us this evening. Welcome, Ms. Olson.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Tonight, you are being asked to provide some direction on next steps for both of our legal services contracts. As you may recall, back in 2023, we entered into a contract for civil services. Our city attorney from Kennedy and Graven is here, and then we also have a agreement for prosecution services with Erickson, Bell, Beckman, and Quinn. Both of these agreements had an initial 3-year term, and that's coming up at the end of December here. That will expire, and with that, you are being asked to provide some feedback on whether you'd like to go out for another request for proposals, or if you have, per our professional services agreement, you do have the option to extend the contract term. You can waive that provision in the professional services agreement. As part of this review, staff did conduct a survey of all of our department heads and city manager to provide feedback related to both the prosecution and the civil side. And the staff was asked to provide feedback on 5 general areas, speaking about general responsiveness and communication, quality of work and legal advice, understanding of our city operations and our values, cost and the value, as well as professionalism and collaboration. It by far came back as staff was very satisfied with both the prosecution side and the civil side. And with that, staff would recommend a contract extension if council is interested in that. If you do decide to go out for a request for proposal, that would be a separate process, and we would involve both staff and council in that process. So either way, whichever you choose, this will be coming back before you in one way, shape, or another, either with the request for proposal or for an extension of professional services agreement.
Great, thank you, Ms. Olson. And I think the idea of putting the policy in place originally was to make sure we had, first of all, a policy about our professional services. Certainly, we always want to make sure that we're making sure we're getting the best value for the taxpayers, taking advantage of whatever innovations there might be out there in the marketplace and things like that. The idea of putting in the ability of the council to waive that every 3 years requirement was to say that there can be cases where we're perfectly satisfied with our services, and the council has the ability to waive the requirement to go out for proposals every contract and every 3 years. So that's where we are, just to kind of summarize what Ms. Olson had said and to give a little bit of historical context. So really our decision is, does the council feel it's in the city's interest to go out for requests for proposals at this time on these contracts, or to waive that requirement? So interested to hear from the council. Councilmember Strawn.
Since we had just gone out for proposals 3 years ago and gone through that due diligence at that time, vetting out the proper folks, and with the high satisfaction rate on 5 metrics from the staff, I would be inclined to extend the existing professional services agreements.
Councilmember Groff.
I would agree with that. We did a thorough vetting the last time, and I was part of that committee that went through the process. I think it was done very well at the time, but I think repeating it every 3 years, unless we had something that was an issue, is unnecessary use of staff time, and actually the council's also. And there are costs involved in that, so I would go for waiving at in this period.
Good. Other thoughts from council members? Councilmember Schroeder.
I'm just curious, did you talk to any council members about their ratings of this service?
We did not. We did an internal review.
Perhaps we'll hear more this evening.
I was going to say, since you were part of the original process, and then it would be the next one, I thought it would make sense to talk to council members as well as staff.
I will say in the past, that has been part of the process when renewal was being looked at, and so just as a note. Other thoughts from council members? Councilmember Bauer.
Nothing, I mean, it wasn't part of it 3 years ago. I'm typically always in favor of going out for RFP. We just saw a budget that was quite large, and I'm always one to beat up vendors and to do vendor consolidation and whatnot. It's a great way to lower costs, so I would be in favor of doing RFP just from the side of just reducing costs.
Right, so I guess I haven't spoken up yet. I can see and understand the point of view, and once again, that's why the policy was in place, to give us the ability to look at the financial part of it as well. I think that in this case, I'm not 100% sure that from our experience that we necessarily see a lot of reduction in costs when we have gone out before for contract or for requests for proposals. I don't know that we were seeing things necessarily come in under what we're spending now. I think there's sort of a going rate for these types of legal services. And so there's sometimes I think in these cases of some of these professional services, it relates more to the service we're getting and whether we're satisfied with that and if we have concerns. And I can say in this case, it doesn't appear to be the case. I know that in our last go-around, I did learn some things about the incumbent city civil attorney at that time that I hadn't been aware of, so it was helpful to have counsel involved in that, and I think that helped inform the decision-making. But my understanding at this time, my personal point of view, is that I don't necessarily see any issues from a performance point of view. And I think that we, having just done it 3 years ago, it does make sense to continue at least for another extension period. That's my thoughts. But ultimately, we'll have to have some sort of motion, I think, to waive or not to waive.
Mayor, I'd like to motion to extend the professional services agreement as for the two, for Kennedy and Graven and Erickson, Bell, Beckman, and Quinn for additional 3-year terms.
Seconded.
Right, and just before we get to consideration, I just want to make sure, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this item this evening? All right, doesn't appear.
I would just note we're here.
All right, we do have our incumbent prosecuting attorney here as well, just to find out what we're up to here.
And so if you ever want to see us, invite us to a workshop. You don't see what we're doing on the criminal side of things.
So once again, the request is that if the council wants to know more about the prosecuting services and what's going on, that certainly we could schedule them for a presentation and a work session, which is not a bad idea necessarily. All right, with that, we have the motion from Councilmember Strawn to waive the requirement for the request for proposals and authorize the renewal for 3 years for both civil and prosecuting. That was seconded by Councilmember Groff, I believe. All right, to the motion, Councilmember Strawn.
I think we've discussed. I think we did a lot of work on this 3 years ago. We have largely satisfied folks, and it does take a lot of staff time. And I feel like there's a lot of things on the staff side of things that are coming, or it would just be nice to put this aside for right now and say that one, we've got that for right now. Not for sure. I think after 2 cycles, it's absolutely worth looking to see what else is out there. But so that's my thought.
Right, additional discussion as the seconder, Councilmember Groff.
My thoughts on are that the legal advice is very critical to the city and to how comfortable I feel here. So going out for the lowest bidder is not what I'm looking for in this type of thing. I'm looking at from someone who gives us good representation, prosecutes things thoroughly, and gives us good legal advice at our council meetings. And I feel very comfortable with who we have now. I'm not saying in 3 years we shouldn't look again, but I do think you have to look at legal services a little differently than some other services.
Right, other discussion on the motion, Councilmember Bauer.
As someone that's had bad, expensive lawyers and good, cheap lawyers and everything in between, and a full set of them, yes, you do look at things other than just the dollar signs. I think that's evident.
Other discussion on the motion? Councilmember Schroeder.
Yeah, since I wasn't involved with the vetting of it, and of course, we weren't asked our opinions on what we thought about it. Yeah, I have a tendency to not support it, so.
All right. With that, we have the motion before us. If there's no further discussion on the motion, once again, the motion is to waive the requirement to go out for proposals based on the policy and allow for the extension, which is allowed under the policy. With that, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
That motion passes 3-2 with Councilmember Bauer and Councilmember Schroeder in opposition. All right. With that, then, that brings us to item K under our business items. I don't know if we've ever gotten that high on our business items. This is to consider appointment to the Public Works, Environment, and Transportation Commission to fill a vacancy. Excuse me, I was just going to look up what that vacancy is for a term ending March 31st, 27. Thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. With that, we did conduct the interviews of the 2 candidates we had, or the 2 applicants we had for the commission last Wednesday, and as usual, we had 2 very good applicants, very capable, and would both serve us well, so we get paid the big bucks to make the tough decision between those 2 excellent candidates. I don't know if the council wants to do a little bit of discussion before a motion, or if we want to dive right in with a motion, but I'll defer to the council on that.
We could have the statement that the chair of the commission made. That was in our packet.
Yes, we do have that. Did you want it to be read or
Well, I think it should
or
be
considered?
considered, yeah.
So I think the, and I don't have it, it doesn't appear to be in the packet.
Oh, maybe
I think we received it
was sent out as an
separately.
email, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was said as an email.
Yep. Not that we can't locate
I just thought he
that.
did a good review of what his comments.
Yeah, I appreciated that comment.
We're just zeroing in on the email.
I have it.
Mr. Trudgeon. How
Pretty-
about,
pretty lengthy.
I was just going to say, how about a summary?
Interview, both candidates presented themselves well and appreciate the application and interview responses. Preference of the chair's open spot is Katie for the following reasons: prior experience in a volunteer government role, her demeanor, and self-selected characteristics. Her answer to the fourth question, what do I love most about living in Roseville? Bring a different perspective to the council, reflecting where she lives and her lived experience. Bring some gender balance to the commission as well. So that was Turkey 6 comments.
Thank you, Mr. Trudgeon, I appreciate that. With that, then, anything else the council wants to consider or comment about in relation to this appointment? And I finally got the names of the two candidates in front of me.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Katie Brokaw Pulale to the PWET Commission for a term ending on 3/31/27.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Groff to appoint Ms. Brokaw Pulale. Discussion on the motion as the maker, Councilmember Strawn.
Yeah, I just, Chair Fisick mentioned and I had an opportunity to speak with him after, and I felt we had two great candidates, and I saw them as very similar, but he really brought home this part, that he appreciated what she loved, and it was that she said she loves the diversity, that it's a close-knit city that feels like it can be accessible to everyone. And so I think that really spoke to him, and that's why he recommended her. And after listening to his reasonings of how she would fit into what they need, the skills of the other candidate are matched by some of the other members on the existing commission. So it's not that in a different makeup, it wouldn't have been the perfect combination, but that with the people who are there already, some of that person's expertise already mirrored, and that she brought a different set of skills that he felt would be really valuable.
All right, thank you. And Councilmember Groff is the seconder of the motion.
No, I did read through Mr. Fisick's analysis in his email, and I thought it was very spot on. Again, we had two excellent applicants, and as you always say, Mayor, they should always apply again, because another time, another commission would probably come out differently.
All right, other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, is there, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that appointment is made. Congratulations to Ms. Brokaw Pulale. And our apologies if we've just totally butchered your name
Correct.
pronunciation. Yes. All right, with that, then that brings us to the end of our business items this evening. We don't have any council member initiated items before us this evening for direction. That brings us then to meeting minutes. Are there any changes or corrections to the draft meeting minutes that were presented with the packet? These, once again, are the minutes for our August 11th council meeting. If not, a motion to approve would be in order.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Bauer to approve the minutes from our August 11th meeting. Any discussion on the motion?
No discussion.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. That passes unanimously. Those minutes are approved. That brings us then to our consent agenda. Mr. Trudgeon, if you'd give us an outline of the items on our consent agenda this evening.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 10A approves payments in the amount of $3,689,784.54. Item 10B approves one massage therapy establishment license to Tan Massage located at 2855 Hamlin Avenue. Agenda item 10C approves the purchase of new irrigation clocks at Cedar Home Golf Course, replacing the old ones that were installed in 1988. And for at the Roseville Skating Center, the purchase of new fire alarm system, replacing the system installed in 1999, and the purchase and installation of new rooftop units to control the temperature in the arena. Item 10D approves the termination of an easement in the Twin Lakes Parkway south of the PIC parcel. The drainage easement was created in 1978 for the previous property owner to the south and is no longer needed. Item 10E authorizes the city to enter into the agreement with MetLife for group insurance benefits and paid family and medical leave administration. Staff went out for proposals, and based on the responses and interviews, is recommending the city switch from New York Life to MetLife for life insurance benefits and use MetLife for the paid family and medical leave program that will start on January 1st, 2026. The change will lead to a slight dollar savings on the life insurance benefits. Most importantly, the city's cost as well as the employee's cost for the paid family medical leave program will be less than if participating in the state paid family leave program, while still enjoying the same benefits of the state's program. Item 10F approves entering into an agreement with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety to accept auto theft prevention grants. The grant will allow the city's police department to purchase 2 stationary cameras using license plate reading technology to be deployed in high auto theft areas. Then finally, item 10G approves an amendment for the Roseville Fire Department, an agreement, not an amendment, an agreement for the Roseville Fire Department to use the building located at 1500 Highway 36 West, the former Department of Education building, for training for a 1-year period. And that is the consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Is there a motion from the council on the consent items this evening?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Groff, to approve the consent items as presented. Discussion on the motion. Councilmember Strawn.
Yes, I wanted to definitely applaud the department for going out for RFP or RFQ on MetLife because of their efforts. The paid family medical leave is supposed to be 0.88% of gross earnings, split evenly at 0.44% between the employer and the employee. Because of their due diligence, it's actually going to be 0.75%, so it actually saves the employee a bit, and it saves us as well. So pretty much unheard of from anyone else that I've heard that goes out for a quote, and with the 2-year guarantee, there is a cost to opt out of the state plan, but is by far outweighed by this participation. So
right,
thank you to Ms. Olson for being available to chat about nerdy HR things.
All right. I think that falls under other duties as assigned, right? Other discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. That passes unanimously. Those consent items are approved. That brings us to a brief review of upcoming agendas. Under future agenda review, Mr. Trudgeon.
Wrong button. All right, our next meeting is September 8th. We have a couple proclamations to start the meeting off. We'll receive an update in the streetlight policy. I think we had some direction last time, so we'll bring that policy potentially for adoption. We'll also have the discussion with the close proximity building ordinance and have some ideas on what to bring forward and looking for some direction. Also, we want to discuss the future of the Roseville leaf recycling program. Site, not program.
Okay.
As you know, we operate that. And we do have some costs coming up that we do need to have a conversation about the future of utilizing that site. It's a site that is very popular and well used. The problem is we're not able to really staff that, so we get a lot of extra stuff that is put in there, whether it's leaves or not, and certainly not always from residents and often from contractors that should be using it. So we need to talk through that issue a little bit, and it's just more of a discussion at this point. We want to discuss beekeeping regulations. I wanted to get it on this meeting, but just couldn't put it together, so we'll bring that back up. And then approve the franchise extension agreement with Comcast, finally getting that in front of the council for approval. This is really great news. Usually the franchise agreements take a lot of work. There is, I think it goes through a couple more years at least.
5 years. I
Yeah, and this extension is 5 years beyond that. So the mayor is well aware of it, and North Straw is now serving on it, so it's really a great win by 9 North to get that done. So we'll get that approved as well. On the 15th, we have an EDA meeting, so certainly we can talk about the stuff we talked about earlier tonight about the fund balance, which is not listed on there directly, but put that on.
talk about the Bryce Larpenteur Alliance and really receive a presentation from the executive director. Consider an amendment to the development agreement for a TIF note at the harbor, which is the properties on County Road C, and then review various professional services contracts that are coming up, legal with Eller, CE, and Golden Shovel. We'd also have a regular council meeting that night, and we'll look to have a joint meeting with the Parks and Rec Commission, receive the Finance Commission's recommendation on budget and levy, and look to award the contract for architectural services for the Civic Campus project. Deadlines are coming up on that. I think it's Wednesday they're supposed to be in. So we'll start looking at those and come forward with some recommendations. And then you can see the meetings in September, September 22nd is the not to exceed, and then we have those other meetings in October and
Great, thank you, Mr. Trutchen. Are there any council member initiated items for future agendas or council reports and announcements? Great, hearing none then, the only other item we have remaining on our agenda this evening is a motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Bauer to adjourn. No discussion on a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and we are adjourned at 9:14 PM. Thank you, everyone.